That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It is time to call the annual town meeting of the town of the city of Peoria. It is now called to order. Please rise for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, just a word of explanation as to what we're doing this evening. Everyone who is in attendance in this room and also room 110, which is our overflow room, and we might even have some people standing in the hallway, I'm not certain yet, but they are all electors, and we have checked to make sure that everyone is a resident of the township that will be voting. And they can, and as an elector, everyone can make motions and second. So I believe the Township Attorney, John Redlingshafer, would like to say a word of further explanation.
Just quickly, thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for verifying our slate of electors tonight. For both the annual town and the special town meeting, we will be governed by the Township Code, which has its own unique features, first established well back in the 1800s. And related to that is the idea of pure democracy. Anybody who shows up has a vote. And so that's why both the rescheduled annual town meeting and the special town meeting have that special threshold, just as Madam Clerk advised, and I appreciate her opportunity, and her expertise to make sure that both the overflow room, council chambers, and potential overflow there into the hallway still affording those electors who are present with the full right to vote. So if there are any questions along the way with procedure in both the annual town meeting and the special town meeting, I am here. Obviously, just so you know, in anticipation of the special town meeting, that is a higher threshold, which again goes to kind of why, considering the topics at issue, that higher threshold is that at least 15 electors must be physically present in the various rooms here today to take action. Thank you.
The first order of business is we are taking nominations for the position of moderator. So the floor is open. I would like for someone to make a motion for a moderator. Is there a second? Thank you. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any more nominations from the floor for moderator? Seeing none, the nominations are closed. So all those in favor of electing Jim Artis as moderator, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, so Jim Artis has been elected. I'm sorry. Jim Artis has been elected moderator by a majority vote. Please rise and repeat after me. If you agree, just say "I do" at the end. Do you swear to perform the position of moderator of the annual town meeting faithfully and impartially as required by law?
I do.
Thank you. You may please take the chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Could you read the next item, please?
Item number 4 on the first agenda is the statement of financial affairs of the town of the city of Peoria, and we have a request to approve. This is in your packet, so this financial statement, it's a full page.
Okay. Is there a motion? Citizen Graham. Thank you. Seconded by Citizen Sear. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Do you need anything additional, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay. Anyone opposed?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Item number 5 is the approval of the minutes of the annual town meeting held on April 9th, 2019.
Do we have a motion? Motion by Citizen Nickteen. Is there a second? Seconded by Citizen Ruckriegel. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. Opposed? Same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It passes unanimously. Number 6 is the citizens' opportunity to address the electors, and I have not received any emails or anything for citizens to address.
Is this the portion for the general comments that you want me to read?
Yes.
Okay. We welcome any general comments pursuant to Public Act 0950-761. Any matter or proposal not set forth in the published agenda shall not be considered at the annual town meeting other than advising that the matter may be considered at a special meeting of the electors at a later date. Any 15 or more registered voters residing in the township may request an agenda item for consideration by submitting in writing to the town clerk, signed by the 15 town electors. So if there is no elector that would like to address us at the town meeting, we would accept a motion to adjourn. Citizen Ruckriegel, is there a second? Citizen Kelly. Please, show of hands for all those in favor of the motion to adjourn. Anyone against? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, we are now at the special town meeting of the town of the city of Peoria, and it is now called to order. And again, we need to explain that this is a meeting of the electors, and they may make motions and votes, and just so that we are transparent and it can explain the special meeting, the annual or the township attorney would like to explain this one also.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. As I alluded to earlier, this is the special town meeting where we must have a minimum of 15 electors present. The board set the annual town meeting agenda a long time ago. And in the interest of transparency, a decision was made and the board voted in October to actually call a special town meeting for an item that was not contemplated when that original agenda was published. That is why you have a special town meeting tonight. It may seem redundant, but we figured with such an important agenda item that was not contemplated when the first agenda came through, we felt in the interest of transparency that the process for the special town meeting be followed with the additional attention that goes with that. Madam Clerk, all I would ask is that we do verify we do have 15 electors in attendance to proceed.
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we again have to nominate a moderator. So the nominations are open for the position of moderator. Is there a second? Okay, thank you. Are there any more nominations from the floor? Are there any more nominations from the floor? Okay, seeing none, the nominations are closed. And then all those in favor of electing Jim Artis as moderator, please raise your hand. Okay. And anyone opposed? Okay. So we have to swear you in again, Mr. Artis. So could you not repeat, but say I do at the end. Do you swear to perform the position of moderator of the special town meeting faithfully and impartially as required by law?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. You can take the chair.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, you can call the next item.
Okay. This is the consideration, discussion, and vote to purchase real property at 427 West Main Street in Peoria. There is information in your packet if you would like to read that over. Hopefully you already have. But the people in the overflow room will also be voting. So once we have a vote on this, we might have to pause, and we'll get a text from the overflow room. So it might take a few minutes when we vote. So
maybe just to make sure everybody got that last part, since there's other potential electors in the overflow room, just explain exactly how that process will work from their vote to you.
Okay, Connie, who is my staff member, she is down in the overflow room with a laptop, and she will be texting me how everyone votes down there. So that might be a little bit, she'll do the count, and then she'll relay that to me as soon as she can get that together. So
Thank you. Not sure how if we want to put a motion out, or if we would like to give the supervisor maybe a couple minutes to explain the item in front of us. Maybe that would be the best way to proceed on this. Councilman or Elector Citizen Graham.
I would very much like the two township office holders who, if approved, would be sharing this building to comment on this special acquisition, and then we can go from there.
Seeing no objection, welcome.
Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to pursue this project. I think this project will benefit both the taxpayers and the township clients. By allowing this purchase to go through, you and the electors will be removing a yearly levy for rent that we currently pay. And with rent and parking, that's a $40,000 plus amount that the taxpayers will never be burdened with again. There will be no borrowing, no bonding, no any loans what sort. We have the money in our reserves, and especially after we went through our budget reduction, we kept that, and we will still have a 6-month balance, and I'm very comfortable with that in our reserves. I think this building, you're going to help take a building that has been vacated for several years. This will not only be a great asset to the West Main corridor, but to the neighborhood in general, and it will allow the township to better serve its clients, both on the relief side and the assessor side. It's much, much more convenient for anyone. And I believe this is something that the township was going to do for some time. It was my understanding when I came into this office that originally this building, or the office we were in, was a temporary move anyway. And I just think this location, it's a better work environment for the employees, much, much better access for our clients. And I hope everyone here can see their way to support this. And if you have any questions, I will be available throughout the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Max Shafley, the City of Peoria Assessor, and I guess I just want to share with, ever since I've been in the office, there's been talk in the office amongst the assessor, who was Bonnie Gavin at the time, and the former supervisor of assessments about purchasing a building. Well, it never happened. That was 20 years ago, I mean, during this time span. Well, this, because of the space that we're in, and the amount of rent that went up, we found it feasible to, go out on the market and look for a building. And so, because of, we looked pretty hard at different buildings that were available probably the past 6 months. And this building, I knew the former owner of it previously, and I always knew about this building because I always fought taxes on it, assessments on it at the Board of Review. So I'm very familiar with it. I didn't realize it was, needs, the deferred maintenance on it is needed. And so when we looked at it, I looked at all the sales and just did kind of a comparison. When we made the offer and they accepted it at $190,000, it's on the lower end of, on a price per square foot basis, of the sales that we looked at for probably the past year or two. And then looking at it further, and I probably shouldn't even get into this, but if we make repairs, because we know it needs some maintenance to it and remodeling, it's going to put it up to the level of other sales of, adding it in there. The remodeling cost, it'll bring it up to the level of sales of buildings that are probably not quite, once this is done, it's going to be pretty good condition. And once the remodel's done, for our purposes, it'll put it up to the level of normal sales and average to good condition. So that's how I look at it. I think it's a good move. It's a great location in this district and on Main Street, very accessible. And so that's my opinion. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Citizen Kelly.
Thank you, Mr.
Moderator.
Moderator. It's my understanding also that part of your plan is to rent out part of this building. Can you go into that a little bit for us, please?
Well, we have looked at individuals because the building is rather large. So we have my grand plan would have been, it would be nice to make it more of a community center, neighborhood meetings, multi-purpose use in that. There is a group, and I know Citizen Riglenbach had asked me about, why didn't we RFP and blah. Well, I didn't want to get into that until, we purchased this building. I did happen to, I'm the job I'm in, I meet a lot of groups and agencies that we deal with, and my dealings in townships, senior, moderate to low income senior groups, that is a huge void in this town. If you're not a member of a country club or a health club and you're a low to moderate income senior, you have nowhere to go. That's a big void in a lot of people's lives, and we deal with a lot of these agencies, and I see that a lot. This particular group is called Graceland. They have a great vision, and they have a great plan. Now, we're not tied to that right now. That would be my choice for sure, and I think they could give you a pretty good reason why they should be there. But to bring the whole community together, it's not just for that purpose, but it would be more of a neighborhood group too. They could have neighborhood meetings, roundtable discussions, anything for that corridor that would be viable on that Main Street area would be more than welcome to be in there. But that is one of the things we would do with that other section of the building.
Will you be charging those folks rent?
No, I feel that as other townships, every other township that I've talked to who has senior centers, and there's quite a few, probably over 60% of townships in Illinois have a senior community, and you can look, I've done all my diligence on that. They allow them to go in their buildings, but we would ask that they renovate it and pay for the utilities.
Okay,
I don't feel we want to be in the landlord business.
thank you. And just for the edification of all of us, all of our citizens, could you give us a thumbnail on the financial picture and why this is, why you feel this is a good deal for the taxpayer? And just the financials. I think we understand it's probably better for your clients, but
Tax purpose, well, the citizens would be saving over $40,000 a year that we have to levy every year for them to pay the rent, and that would be gone.
total cost of the building and renovation is?
Oh, total cost of the building and renovation. Well, I've sent those numbers out. The total cost for the purchase of this is a pretty good approximation, is $497,000. That's the building and renovation. So you're looking at like an 11-year payout, 12-year, if we were to borrow the money and pay the current rent we pay. But we have that money. It's been earmarked for a project.
And just for clarity, when you say an 11-year payoff, could you just explain how you get to that? I mean, I'm aware of it, but it should be out there, I think.
$42,000 a year in rent. Multiply 42 times 12. I would assume you're going to get to pretty close to $497,000.
Thank you. And Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to approve this project.
There's a motion to approve, seconded by Citizen Graham. Additional discussion, Citizen Riggenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Moderator, excuse me. Mr. Abnar, if you could, or perhaps this is a question for our township attorney. You have not, there is no agreement with Graceland at this point for that space, is there? And is that something that will come back to this body for approval, or is that something that you as supervisor have the authority to execute solely on your own?
Yep, great question. There's a couple things that will come back to this board. Not the electors, will come back to the Board of Trustees. First off, the obvious one will be the final selection of the contractor to handle the construction, remodeling, renovation. Tonight, we're simply seeking the purchase of the real estate. In terms of maybe future tenants, I would argue, yes, that those are additional potential uses of property that may have to come back to the board. However, if it's a unilateral decision to rent it to Enti, well, it sounds like you weren't going to charge rent. You know, that's, I suppose, more geared towards discretion of the supervisor. But what's important, and from what I'm hearing, if the supervisor is not going to rent this, this also, precludes the property from potentially being taxed. By not charging rent, there's the potential risk that it falls off the tax exempt rolls. So in terms of the selection process of future groups, I think Supervisor Abnauer would welcome consultation with board members on who they think would be suitable folks to utilize the space, but there will be more coming back to the board as the Board of Trustees itself with future uses, particularly on the construction. And I believe the resolution tonight also requires Supervisor Abnauer to come back to the next annual town meeting, which is only, now that I do the math, 5 months away, to give you an update on that very issue to the electors. Great question.
Thank you. I think there's a couple things that give me a little concern. If there's going to be space available at no cost, I would imagine that there would be multiple nonprofit agencies in our community that would be very interested in an opportunity like that. So the concept of a community center is clearly worthwhile, and I can see the benefit of it at multiple levels, but working with many of those other agencies, I just don't think that's the right way to do it, is to just arbitrarily come before us and say this is the agency that we're going to give rent free to. And perhaps there would be, if there's a window for 3 years, we'll give it to them rent free, or an RFP process just to see what kind of interest and what kind of programming other agencies in town would be able to offer. Perhaps there's one that's actually already established here in Peoria that would be able to fill that void that you described. So I guess that the purchase price, according to our assessor, sounds like that part sounds pretty good, but the rehabilitation costs, the rehab of the structure, again, not going out for bid, it's hard to say if that's a fair price or not. So those are my concerns at this point.
We have sent that out to bid. I've had 3 bids
That's right.
on it. So, and one thing you'd have to keep in mind, township statutes require certain agencies we are not allowed by state statute to deal with a lot of agencies. We don't deal with children, families. Those are out of the township realm. I deal with a lot of agencies, and I would openly look at anyone who wanted to do this, but this Graceland, we're requiring that they pay for the renovation. That's going to take a lot of agencies out of that. That's a lot of money you're asking. And so I would be more than happy to look at it. If you would like to sit down and work with me with that, I would be more than happy to do that. I will listen to anyone's suggestions. This just happens to be a particular organization that I think fits not only our needs, the community's needs, but that falls right under the statutes of township government. Okay?
I understand that the township has some statutorily requirements that could preclude other agencies, but if you're going to be offering the space, I mean, that wouldn't be you offering those services. So I would still suggest that opening it up to an RFP to see what kind of programming plus interest there would be from other agencies would be a prudent thing for us to do with the taxpayers' money.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't have any problem doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember, or I should say, Citizen Moore.
Thank you. Supervisor, can you tell me what is the square footage of this building?
The square footage of the building is 7,700 square feet.
Okay. And if I understand it correctly, you did indicate that at this point, today, we're just looking at the purchase of the building.
This is just the purchase of the building today.
And you've put out to bid the different work. I know one of the emails I received indicated that you were having some difficulty finding some minority contractors.
Yes.
So I'd be glad to try to work with you if you've not gotten enough of those in.
That would be great.
And so what is the expected completion of the renovations?
We would like to target May or June.
Okay. And it will be sometime after that before you would start looking for others to possibly cohabitate?
We're only renovating our side of the building. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the township team? I have a couple, maybe, I don't know who, maybe the attorney, maybe to start. Just for clarification on the vote here. So I understand that we're voting on the purchase, does that also include the entire amount of money that would be budgeted for the renovations? So are we looking at that whole number, or is this vote strictly on the purchase of the property?
Thank you. No, it would be related strictly to the purchase. In the resolution, it's the 190,000 plus incidentals, recording. We still would have to negotiate the contract for the purchase. There would be recording fees, attorney fees, things like that. We will come back, meaning the township will come back to the board, and it sounds like Citizen Moore, I got to use that title too. Citizen Moore will be working with Supervisor Abnauer maybe to get some other options for the RFP process for renovation, construction, remodeling. That will come back to the board because that specifically relates to a contractual relationship for the township that does require board approval.
Thank you for that clarification. Was there an appraisal on the property?
Yes, there was an appraisal done by Randy Neff valuation.
And that was?
It came out about 210,000.
110?
Yeah.
Okay.
As is. So.
One of the questions by the previous citizens was regarding the tax exemption, or maybe the answer raised the tax exemption issue. What are the current taxes on that property that will go away if the township purchases the building?
They're probably in the ballpark. I believe they are. It's probably about 9,000 or 10,000, roughly.
9 or 10?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number.
In part of the, I asked for the clarification on the renovation cost, Mr. Abnauer, just because you sent over, we requested that you sent over an itemization, which you did, which it was fairly broad, and I understand that the construction service that gave you that kind of ballparked it, but so one of my concerns is that we approved the purchase, which I think I relayed to you several months ago when we talked about this, that I thought the property was overpriced, but one of the concerns that I have now is, once we potentially approve the purchase of the property, we're pretty much, I hate to use the word half pregnant, but it's obviously that the facility is in need of some work, so it's going to need a certain amount. But then it's going to come down to what you feel and what the trustees feel is an appropriate number for what needs to be done versus maybe this number in here is too high or too low. You understand my concern is just that whatever that expense is going to be, it's going to be somewhere between whatever a low number is and $300,000+.
No, I understand that, but I've talked to several contractors from the previous building, and if the 3 bids we had on that previous building, the general construction costs, and I'm not a bright guy, but I do know a little bit about construction. I've built 3 buildings, and I know a lot of contractors, and the average price of renovation is between $100 and $110 a square foot. We are pretty well in that ballpark. I don't see it jumping anywhere, though. I've got another bid from a crew out of Bartonville, and part of the deal is we will only use trade labor. We're not going to use a non-union crew, and that is going to be the cost. I don't foresee it being over. I think that bid at 300, I think it was 297,000. I think that's going to stick. They've guaranteed that. They've got overages in there. They've got contingencies in there. I will get you 2 more bids. If I have another one right here from another company, it was much higher than Mid-Illinois. And Mid-Illinois, I think they're a good company, woman-owned, and they hire a lot of minorities. They have minority programs that work with young kids out of high school. But I will be glad to work with Citizen Moore and get another bid. Two contractors just said it was too small of a job. They wouldn't even bid on it. So the bids I'm getting, they're all in that same range. I know you have great concerns about that. It is escalating, but I've done several of these in my private life to know these contractors, you can hold them to their bid unless I go in and make a bunch of changes. And the one thing I've learned is the minute you make a change on a drawing, you're in big trouble. So I've spent we paid an architect. We've got good drawings. I'm very comfortable with the bids that they're not going to escalate.
Thank you for that answer. And while you're up there, Mr. Abnauer, it didn't really show up in any of the budget, but that was because this was a budget for the renovations and demolitions and so on. But curious, when you go from your if you go from your current location downtown up onto Main Street, what do you look for your maintenance costs? You know, how are they going to fluctuate? Maintenance, ongoing maintenance. I assume you're going to have yard and parking lot things done, snow plow, stuff like that. How is that going to compare?
Snow plowing, I plan on having the landscaping done where there is no maintenance. All mulch, low shrubs, no grass. I think that's just maintenance you can do without. I don't believe to build something and have landscaping that needs constant work. Snow plowing, snow plow removal will certainly be an issue. Heating, air conditioning, monthly utilities, all that. We're anticipating in the area probably, I think I'm talking to Silco right now. They're trying to give me some numbers. I certainly will get back solid numbers. I don't want to take a guess off my head. Ameren is going to come through and do a walkthrough and give me a pretty solid number. We have to bid out the snow removal, and that, of course, is on Mother Nature. It could be zero or it could be $5,000. That's the. But I know the overall savings will be very good for the citizens of this town.
Well, I think everyone understands the math that's being used, looking at your yearly rent and a 11 or 12-year payback if you were to pay that rent. But I also think that there's just several unanswered questions that I think could be would probably be more prudent to have the answers to, frankly. I'm not going to dominate this. We've asked quite a few questions here. I think that there's some additional work to be done. I'm assured that, or I'm relieved that we're not voting to approve that, close to $400,000 on the renovations tonight, because I definitely think that needs a lot of scrutiny.
Renovations. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But just going back to my original concern, paying $190,000 for that building that's been there for quite some time, and I agree with you on the location. I think that it's probably a better location to serve your clientele than where you are. But I would like to see, depending on how this vote turns out, I would like to see a little bit sharper number on your additional costs that you're going to have once you buy this building, and then we'll deal with the concerns on the renovation costs down the road. Did you want to? Okay.
Else has questions?
Citizen Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm just wondering, is there, just because there are all these additional information that we need and unanswered questions related to the bids, the renovation, the tenant, is there a rush? I mean, do you have to have this done now, or is it something that we could defer for a month? I know we'd have to schedule a special meeting and have more of that information brought back to us.
Oh, okay. To do that, we'd have to start over the process and have another special town meeting. So that's the notice requirement of not less than 14 or more than 40, but at the same time, the board or 15 electors would actually have to take action again to call for the special town meeting. So that it wouldn't be delayed just a month. We would have to either get a petition from 15 electors or have the township board take action at its next meeting to call for the special town meeting. So that's probably, again, maybe 2 or 3 months. It's just simply because of the statutory requirements to call. The annual town meeting is held, well, traditionally, every April. The special town meeting, you have to do certain notice and publications as well.
Couldn't we, as a follow-up, if we were to go down this road that I'm suggesting, then call the meeting? Couldn't we make that motion to call the special meeting now, so it wouldn't be a 2 or 3 month delay?
No, the statute is pretty clear that, I guess if you're asking, can you recess it, the problem would be getting the notification. Tonight is the special town meeting. We would have to go, again, you could go through those steps, but we would have to go through the statutory steps again, which is calling for the special town meeting. The action tonight, there's really nothing in the town code that contemplates the formal recess. Yes, on the annual town meeting, yes, you can recess it. But again, we're talking with a very specialized purchase. And I think to err on the side of not following the rules for the annual town, but for the special town would be more prudent, which requires a specialized notification process and action.
So if we were to defer it, it would be, you're saying 2 to 3 months because of the notice?
Beth, Madam Clerk, would that be about right?
Yes, because of the notification process that we have to go through, so, yes.
Okay.
I appreciate that, but I believe that this building at this price, and I know these renovation costs, and I know some of you may disagree, but I really have done my research on this. I've done my diligence. I will be glad to come back and bid this however you would like, but I think it's imperative we purchase this building tonight. I think we need to do that. I think we can move forward. We can come across, and this building, they've gone through it. It's a solid building. We're not going to have any, there's no structural problems. It's got a brand new $51,000 roof that was just put on in March by Kryling. The structure is good. It's not going to fall apart when they dig into it. They've done all the research on it. I've had 3 different crews in there, 2. One wouldn't put the bid together. But I just think, I will answer all the questions later, but I think it's imperative we set this to a vote and buy this building tonight. That's just Citizen Abnauer's opinion.
Okay, and I understand, and Supervisor Abner, or I think you're Mr. Abner during this part of the meeting, and I think the location is great, and I'm supportive of the plan, but it just seems like a lot for us to vote on without all the information that I feel more comfortable having before I make such a vote. Because there are a lot of unanswered questions that I think we have a responsibility as electors or township, whatever we are right now, as township trustees, to make sure that we're, being responsible about our duties and about the taxpayers' money. So I may not be able to support it tonight, but I would support deferring it until we get the additional information.
Okay, thank you. Are we aware, are you aware of any other interested parties in that parcel that would dictate the sense of urgency to doing this tonight?
Just time. The more money we spend on rent, the more money the taxpayers are paying. There's no one who needs to get in that other side. We were going to leave that side vacant anyway. We weren't going to rent that out or do anything with it until I was approached by this particular organization. Was that what you were asking? I'm sorry.
Well,
misunderstanding the question.
You had expressed your desire to have this voted up or down tonight, and I was curious if you were aware that there might be another potential bidder on this property that we were worried about.
Not that I know of. Who knows? Real estate could sell tomorrow. Somebody, if the price it goes down at $190, I think that's a very fair price, and you just hope someone like a Floyd Rashid or a Fulvio Zerla, who are wonderful individuals, but you wouldn't want it to see it fall into hands that it would just set longer than it has.
I wouldn't be concerned about one of those folks at 190. I had Citizen Rodrigo next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Abner, I agree. The location, I think, is perfect. I think you've got bus lines, you've got parking, you've got access. I like the location, and I think that one of the things whenever you and I talked was really about that. I do have some of the same concerns that I'm hearing around the room tonight about getting the numbers together. We've had probably 2 or 3 months, and I'd like to have seen some numbers or been able to talk about some occupancy costs.
About what?
Some occupancy costs. A payback period, you're talking about 11 to 12 years based on just rent. But I think we've got some ongoing costs there that I'd like to feel some comfort level what we're tying the citizens into for the long haul. We don't have an estimated utility yet. We don't have an estimated upkeep on the outside. I think for those that might be in the neighborhoods that are listening tonight, and I have a feeling that many of them are, while it may seem very inexpensive to throw down some mulch and a couple of shrubs, I think that any investment within the West Bluff and among those neighborhoods would expect a little bit more than the bare minimum, so we don't have to upkeep anything. I think you've got to be a good neighbor, and so I think that would cause some concerns. I'd like to know the parking lot, the age, because those can be some big maintenance items. It's not that this is a no for me, but we are in a period of, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to be going. We do know that we have some good news on the horizon, hopefully with the virus coming through soon. But to put the immediacy of a capital project right now where, and in the term that you say takes only it leaves us with 6 months of reserves, may be a question as we get into this, because we know that our older population, which is a key demographic for what your work is one of the most affected by the pandemic. And so I wonder about the immediacy of what we're talking about tonight, and I would kind of echo my citizen Jensen on why we have to do this tonight. If this would be able to come back with that information that would be more key to help us make a better balanced judgment. Again, not against this, but I think that we've got to have all the information come forward before we can tie the citizens to something this long term. It looks good on the surface, but let's get a little bit more of the data that goes into it. As far as the RFP process, I think that we owe it to all of our community partners, because we've got some wonderful community partners, and I could name some, but we'd be here for a long time, that do specifically target our aging population. And I think that before we get tied into one, who it does sound like that they are very reputable and they have a good track history, we need to be able to see what the community would value, not just one person, but also what other entities might be able to supply programming as well that would fall within the niche and the mission of what we're talking about tonight. For me, also too, the cost data on construction from a year ago, from 9 months ago, is really null and void from what it is today, because materials alone have gone up 15 to 20% in most cases because of supply chains that come back in, if they can find the right materials. And some contractors have been able to put some up, some haven't, and so I think to be able to see those bids are really critical for us to be able to make a decision. I know you've got one bid, you may have a second one there that you can show us, but I would like a little bit more work done in there. Again, not against this. I think that this might be the right move for us. I do like the location. I just think that we are owed a little bit more numerical data for it to proceed.
I appreciate that, and I would just like to say, as far as just throwing down mulch and that, if you've ever looked at any of the buildings I've built, I've never done that. I would never do that. I have total respect for my neighbors. I just am talking about low maintenance, attractive materials.
Thank you.
Costs, we pay rent, we pay utilities right now. I can base our utilities on what they would be in a building that might be 500 square feet larger than what we're at now. I can certainly give you all these factors. The cost, the material costs, these bids from these two contractors, and I had some done just a few months ago, they're all pretty much the same. They're telling me that the material that they have is pretty stable. We're using a lot more aluminum because that's coming in a lot more to frame out. But, you know, we could go on and on and on, and I will answer as many questions as there are. We're probably going to have two different visions on this. I think my background of when I see a project that I feel is good, I will go at it and I will stay in budget. I've never broke a budget in my life, and I wouldn't break this budget. I know we can do this for $100 to $110 a square foot. The total cost for this project will be $390,000. I do not see us breaking that. I guarantee we're not going to break that. And I know you all may have your concerns, but I have built buildings, and I'm sure you have too, and I understand the pitfalls that come with it. So I'm just confident we can do this, and I don't know why we should delay. We've been working on buildings since March, and I know that's not a long time, but I feel this is the right building, the right location, the right price, and I think it's the right time to do it. But then again, that's my opinion, and everyone has a vote on that.
Just for clarification, Mr. Abnauer, you said we can get this whole project done for $390,000. That is not including the purchase price.
Not including the purchase of the building, correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't.
Right.
I
I'm
didn't miss
sorry,
something.
yeah.
Okay.
I should
That's
have
okay.
stated that is the construction cost.
Okay, thank you. I had Citizen Gray up next.
Thank you. I think the trustees, the electors are well aware of the fact that we've had the functions of these two offices occurring underneath the parking deck downtown. I think most of us are aware of how radically the rent was jacked up, causing these township office holders to do what they should do, and that is watch out for the taxpayer dollars. We all know that there is a difference between renting and owning, and they are attempting to do a legacy project that will involve these two very important offices with plenty of parking for seniors, citizens in general that may have questions about their assessments, and those folks in our population who need help from the Township Relief Office. What I have discerned as we have worked on this for several months is that no matter what Supervisor Abnauer comes up with, the expectation changes. It's a moving target. I don't see real concerns here. I see a lot of politics here. And I wish some of the questions that were being asked tonight were asked the night some of the people in this room approved the Pierre Marquette deal. My goodness. This is utterly ridiculous. You are being asked to approve the purchase of the PIN number down here on Main Street. You were told this isn't the only bite to the apple, and you know it's not. And you know that Frank Abnauer and Max Schlafly have done their homework. You heard from the Supervisor of Assessments. I'm calling the question.
I'm hearing no second on that. Now I have Citizen Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple of questions, additional questions, before I second the question being called. Mr. Abnauer, could you, you indicated that this space is 5,500 square foot larger than your current location. Will that space provide additional client space for you?
That space will allow us to have classrooms where we can, instead of having our clients scheduled out every so many weeks, we can do orientation once a week. It'll be a much easier process for our general assistance clients to come in and have a classroom where we can have orientation and they can get all their questions answered and they can go start their process and make it a much quicker process like a lot of townships throughout the state do. It will allow us to do some distancing for our employees. We are very crammed in this office. It will allow us to have some separation, to do the distancing that I think we need right now, and I think even when this pandemic's over, this is going to be a concern. This will just open up. It's a much more accessible building, I think, for the assessor's clients that are an aging population and those who own homes. It's a great win-win for everyone. I just see so many positives in this building. Now, sure, and one more thing. I mean, the bid, I hate to derail you, but I wanted to go back to Citizen Rudbriegel. Part of the bid included a new parking lot of that bid. So we will have a new paved lot in there that is all in that bid. So, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Ms. Moore.
Do you see the number of clients that you serve going down in the near future, staying the same, or going up?
I see our client list going up incredibly high with this pandemic. I mean, there is some other agencies that have popped up through this, but right now we're seeing a huge influx, especially with energy assistance, rental, water, because they are now shutting off. Our phone, we had energy assistance last week on Ameren. We had over 12,000 phone calls in 2 days. That's a lot of phone calls. And you can tell that there's just, in the general assistance side, people aren't working. We're getting a lot more ticks in the application process. We're going to streamline that. This building will allow us. We're going to do a lot of streamlining in this new location, too.
Citizen Greb mentioned that the rent at your location had gone up. Can you tell me what the rent at your location, your current location, was 5 years ago and what it is today on a yearly basis?
Well, I wasn't here 5 years ago, so I can only tell you when I came here, it was, I believe, $2,800 a year.
It was how much a year?
$2,800 a year.
$2,800 a year.
Yes.
When
and
you
now
arrive.
we're currently going to be paying, I believe it's $2,800 a month.
So now you indicated $42,000 a year.
Well, and parking, we have to pay for parking, and we pay, I believe, $700 a month in parking passes.
Okay, and so how much notice did you get about your rent increase?
It started at $1,400. The first year we went to $1,400, and we got that notice. Oh gosh, I have a hard time remembering that. We probably got 6 months notice.
Okay. Do you have any idea, or is there in your current agreement how much your rent can be increased each year, or is it possible it could be hiked up quite a bit in the future?
We really don't have a long-term lease with the city. It's kind of a year-to-year thing. So, It's wide open.
So you've graciously gave me a tour of your current facility, and I have to agree with you, it is tight.
Yes.
For the type of services you provide. And you may not know this, but I've been in the building that you're looking to buy, and it is much more spacious.
Much more.
And with the access to the bus lines, and I have to admit, it's a lot easier to see that building than where you currently are. Where you currently are is kind of hidden.
It's very hidden.
I think the citizen artist, I think, mentioned that it was, or maybe it was Citizen Greb that mentioned it's under a parking deck.
Yes.
And so I've had a number of folks who have asked me, where is this building? Where is this place again? So at least where you're going, if this works out for you, would be much more accessible. Lastly, I'm in the process of renovating a space myself. When it's done, it will be a renovated 6,500 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get done, I will have spent close to $600,000. And that doesn't include the purchase price of the building, because this particular building was in rougher shape. So
you're in the $100 a square foot range, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree that when you're talking about, since we're only talking about $190,000, we're not even, I think when you added, and thank you for doing that, but I think when you added all the contracting potential costs, it gave folks pause, but that's not even what we're talking about tonight, because you have to come back to us for that piece. I will tell you, in my current construction process, because of COVID and everything shut down, when they started the project up again, there are materials that they couldn't source. I had to select a different item for that in order to move the project along. And someone mentioned about prices going up. Well, you know, prices always go up. And so if you're already at May or June, once renovations start, and it may be later than that, because I've never had a construction project that ended when they said it was going to end. And so if you're talking May or June, then you're really talking June or July. And if we defer this, then you're talking about September, October.
Correct.
And so I would second I don't know if that was appropriate process, but I'm ready to vote to approve of this process, because I do agree there's been quite a bit of scrutiny on your office, even though I think you probably have more in reserves than the city of Peoria has right now. And your budget and what you have done with the funds that you have, if we probably would have mirrored that over the last couple of decades from a city standpoint, we probably would be in a better shape. And so I'm ready to approve this if the other citizens would agree. So all that long-winded to second the motion to call the question.
Okay, we have a second on the motion to call the question. I would just note that we have at least two other citizens who are have their lights on to raise questions, so the discussion isn't finished yet. But the motion on the floor, which is not debatable, is to call the question. I would ask, since our attorney is not here, Mr. Redling Schaefer, just for everyone's knowledge, the motion to call the question is not debatable, and the motion must pass with, is it 2/3 or 3/4?
Honestly, Mr. Moderator, that escapes me off the top of my head. I can look it up right here if I need to, if we need to take a brief recess.
We can go ahead and wait a second. I just want to make sure that everyone knows before we vote what the real number is.
If you would give me 2 minutes, thank you.
Sure.
Two motions on the floor.
Sorry,
Pardon me.
I didn't hear the question.
Are there two motions on the floor?
No.
There's just
There
one.
was an original motion to approve. Councilman or Citizen Graham made a motion to call the question.
Okay.
So that's what we're voting on.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for your patience. The research indicates that the superseding motion, the motion to call the question, is a 2/3 majority.
2/3. So we're just going to have to, somebody's going to have to do the math and figure out how many people we have, because we have people that are outside of council chambers that are going to vote on this as well. So we'll get, I don't know who wants to be in charge of that, but we'll have to get the total number, and it has to pass by 2/3. We have a motion and a second. Everyone in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand.
Mr. Moderator, could you give me the count of in here, since I'm kind of...
I will give you a count in this room.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm asking.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in this room.
Okay. Connie, do you have a count for me? Okay. She has 11 down there. So that
That's
is 20.
20.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, that's the total.
Is that 404 plus downstairs?
That is just downstairs. There's no one in 404.
Okay.
There was, yeah.
So how many total people are
Okay,
downstairs?
so you said you're saying that 9 voted yes
In this room?
in this room. And we have a total of what in this room? There's no one, okay. So the total in this room, though, is what? If you could count those, please. Sorry.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Looks like 21 in this room.
Okay, so we have 32 total. So. So we would need at least 21 yays, right, to pass? Is that correct?
Well, we still have to do the other side of this, but
I know.
I'm just trying.
That's 2/3 of 32.
So the motion fails because we had 20.
Right.
Okay. So we're back to the original motion, correct?
Right.
Okay. I had Councilman Regenbach, or I should say Citizen Regenbach, and then Citizen Kelly.
There's so many questions that I feel are still outstanding, and we put so many capital projects on hold in the last 9 months. And just as a reminder to all the citizens listening, the landlord that raised the rent on the township is the city of Peoria. So these same people who are here tonight are the ones who agreed to raise the rent because of any number of reasons. I would offer a substitute motion to defer this until the next first available special meeting can be scheduled.
Seconded by Citizen Jensen. Discussion on the motion to defer. Citizen Kelly, on the motion to defer, or was that previous?
I was going to speak to the motion. I'm not going to be voting for, I'm going to be voting against the motion to defer. But
Okay.
But I would still like to speak to the original motion once we get
Once we
past
get
this.
there, if we get there, okay? So this is to the motion to defer. Citizen Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. When it was mentioned that the citizens, the council members at the time voted on the rent increase, what information came to me about that was that the township was flush with cash, and we could use some of that cash. So it wasn't like there was some righteous reason other than the township had more money than we had. So if I was one of those who voted in favor of it, I was led to believe that the township was flush with cash, and because they had done a better job of managing their finances, and the city was going under for the third time. So I will not support a deferral. Thank you.
Thank you. Citizen Ruckriegel?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My vote for deferral on this would not be for the fact that this is not a worthwhile project. I think it is. I think, though, we just need to get the information that we need to be able to make a very balanced decision. And that information, I think we've had a couple of months in discussing it. These are our normal sort of considerations that we would have. And if we're not asking that on this project, when are we ever asking it on our other hats that we wear? It is our duty, the reserves that are there, not to just go out and spend them because they are there. This might be a very worthwhile project, and I'm feeling that it might be. But just to say we have the cash, let's go spend it, without having the numbers in front of us, doesn't make a lot of sense. Our citizens are looking at us, and how we actually treat their dollars makes a difference as well. And just like with the RFP process, I think that needs to be brought forward, and we need to have a plan for that as well. I have heard from other organizations, why was one chosen and not others? And I think that, again, that with the cost of what it's going to come in, all very doable, I think all very answerable. But right now there is no compelling public interest why this has to happen tonight. We've got great services from our township offices, some superior service, and Mr. Abernauer has done some fantastic work and has added value to what the output is there. Yes, the building is small. Maybe that needs to be able to be moved. But good decisions sometimes require a little bit of timing to be able to make sure they are great decisions. And I think that we have that ability right here. We are not pressed. This building has been vacant for a number of years. It's a good site for this, but again, we are not up against a hard deadline. I think that by waiting until we can reschedule another special meeting buys us the opportunity to make for sure that the numbers are in place. I think Citizen Moore has offered some help in being able to find some more minority contractors to be able to bid on the process. Let's have all of that come together at one time. And yes, I do have more questions, because you say that there's a parking lot included in that price. There's not a parking lot included in that price. There may be a coat and seal or a top coat. That is not a brand new parking lot for that price. And I only say that because, not that we have to have a new parking lot in there, but I think that we are owed what we are going to do and what we aren't going to do. And I don't think that quick answers tonight to be able to sort of rush this through are what we do. You've done some great work. I am for sure that you can bring this to the finish line. Let us just have the time to be able to get the right numbers in front of us. And that's why I will be voting for the deferral tonight.
Okay. On the deferral, Citizen Sear.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Abnauer, number one, I want to congratulate you on all the work you've done with the township since you've been voted in. You are an outstanding citizen that works full-time that job, and you brought with you some of your workers. Mr. Shafley is also an outstanding citizen. I want to thank both of you for sending me and all my colleagues all the information on the purchase and all the details that everybody asked you to do. And I appreciate taking all my calls and answering all my questions about this project. And I understand that you're asking me tonight to take a vote on investing money, not spending your money, because that's what we're talking about right now. We would get something for our money. It's this township business. I know the township probably did not defer any capital project since March, to my knowledge. I mean, you guys have a great budget, a surplus, a lot of money, a lot of emergency fund that we don't have here at the city level. So it's like my colleague said, Mr. Graham, I mean, tonight you're getting a rough ride, but I will not vote to defer this. I really appreciate all the work you've done in this, and I understand that you're asking us to invest some of the money we have already in cash investment, not spending money. So thank you very much to you and your team for all the work you've done on this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to concur with Citizen Sears' comments about the level of work and the amount of energy that's and due diligence that's been done on this. Truly, it's a lot of work. The motion, I don't view the motion to defer this as to kill it, because we just vote no. I think that the motion to defer it will allow additional questions to be answered, and then hopefully when those come back, and someone said, with a little bit more, define some of the the other things that we're talking about, whether it's getting someone else in there, who we're going to be using for subcontractors, tighten up those types of numbers, I think it's going to be an easier sell than to just say, well, let's make a $190,000 purchase. Or if someone wants to call it an investment, that too. I mean, so here's the important thing that I think some of us might be missing for the people that are listening in on the discussion tonight. You only have to go about 1.5 miles to find a township that voted to dissolve itself in recent elections. And that's something that's happening with more and more frequency across the state, as we know. And that's not the debate for tonight of whether township government is appropriate or not, but there's a feeling out there about whether or not that's something that we need or should look at. When you talk about the fact that we have this huge amount of money in surplus, if you will, in the budget, some people would say, with the mission that we have, why do we have so much money sitting there? And we've talked about this before. I know you have answers for that. But to the average constituent out there that doesn't know the answers to those, additional information like this can be helpful. So I think it really does a disservice to both the people sitting here and the other electors that are present, either in this room or in another room tonight. It really does a disservice to call this a political stunt about how somebody voted on the Hotel Pier Marquette. So why don't we talk about how somebody voted on Midtown, or how somebody voted on Campus Town, or how somebody voted on you name it. That has nothing to do with this. I think it's just, if nothing else, at a time like this, it's prudent to just get the questions answered and then let the project stand or fall on its own. So if this project can't bear a couple more months until we can get a meeting scheduled, and let's get it. Let's do the work tomorrow. Let's get the meeting scheduled at the first possible date that you can get the information back to us, and we can get a meeting scheduled. We can move on with this. So I really do. I appreciate the questions that are asked. I agree with everything that was said about your offices, both of your offices, and the work that's being done. I just think we owe it to the people that are paying the freight to answer the questions fully. And that's all. That's the only reason I'm going to be supporting the deferral. Because if it were a question tonight of the purchase or not, based on the lack of information, I'd be a not. So I just as soon support the deferral. And that's what I intend to do. So we have a motion and a second to defer till the first available date can be set. The motion was by Citizen Riggenbach, and it was seconded by Citizen Jensen. All in favor of the motion to defer, please raise your hand. Madam Clerk? Motion's been called. You had no light up. Everybody here has been using a light. The motion's on the floor. Motion's on the floor. Everyone in favor, please raise your hand. I'll give you the number.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in this room.
6 years. Okay. There were 0 yeas and 11 nays in the.
How many we were on yays?
We need, let's see, there's 21, so there's
How many yays did we have in the other room?
0.
Okay. We had 0 yays. So nobody voted to support the deferral. So based on the number previously, the motion fails. Correct? Because this is just a simple majority.
Right.
Okay. So the motion fails with only 6 ayes. So now we're back to the original motion, which was to approve. Going way back then, Citizen Kelly made the motion. Citizen Graham seconded. I have Citizen Kelly first.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would just like to compliment Supervisor Abnauer for his transparency. I had questions about this myself, as apparently a lot of us have had. I contacted Supervisor Abnauer to get answers to those questions. I didn't fully understand the answers to the questions, and I went back to him again, and he readily answered my questions. I didn't ask all the questions that have been asked here tonight. But we've known this was coming. We've known, and if we had legitimate questions, we had plenty of time to ask those questions. And Supervisor Abnauer, I suspect, I don't know, came here tonight saying, well, I've answered everyone's questions. So it's going to be an up or down based on the facts. And apparently not. Or maybe apparently not for some. The questions that we have on the renovation of the building are irrelevant to the motion. Well, I guess I can't make that pronouncement. It seems to me they're irrelevant to the motion. The motion is whether or not the township is allowed to purchase this building. Just as on a personal note, I will remind the council that I was the one that suggested, but did not move, but suggested that we charge $1 a year for that property rather than raise the rent for that property. But I would encourage the citizens gathered to approve this, and if there are questions about the renovation, great. I think that Mr. Abnauer will be happy either to answer them or to get the answers. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. I have Citizen Graham next.
I'm having whiplash following the arguments against acquiring this real estate. Just listening to one speaker. First, the price wasn't right, but then, well, maybe it would be, but why not delay it? We're not delaying it because we're trying to be fiscally responsible. The rent that the township is being asked to pay right now is ridiculous. You heard the figures. This is going to be on Main Street. It's not going to be under a parking deck. Across the street, you have $100 million plus OSF ministry headquarters being built. Folks, the empty space because of the vacation of these two township offices up onto West Main, and it's going there, will be prime space for use, alternative use, either for OSF itself or for other startups downtown. This is a winner. Fiscal conservatives would find this to be a winner. It's the difference between renting and owning. We went through a lengthy negotiation process with the financial institution that had this property. Supervisor Schlafly, Supervisor Abnauer have done their homework. They have asked you for feedback that would be pertinent or germane to this vote. Now, I will say that the moderator is consistent in being apparently against this or finding some reason. So consistency A+. But some of the rest of you who have problems with it really should have discussed it in more detail beforehand. Because we're trying to help people. Seniors, in many cases, trying to have access to an office. My gosh, you can't even see where that office is. It makes perfect sense bringing in West Peoria and everything else has nothing to do with this. Nothing. I urge you to vote yes tonight and do what's fiscally responsible. All the other questions that you had can be dealt with at our next meeting, but this is the acquisition of the real estate, and it should go forward tonight without any more stunts. Thank you.
I had Citizen Euler next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd just like a clarification on how many votes this decision requires. Thank you.
It's a simple majority. Okay, I'm seeing no other lights. Anyone else? Mr. Supervisor or Mr. Abnauer? Sure.
I really feel I have to address a couple things here. And I agree with Citizen Gray. You know, I've been on this, I've sent Citizen Rodrigo texts and emails weeks ago. Citizen Jensen, weeks ago. It drives me crazy when no one gets back to me for these questions, and I'm working my tail off. When I understand everyone's busy, everybody and you believe me, I know you have bigger and better things. This is a small project. I get it, but it's frustrating as heck to be thrown on this night for all these questions when this could have been done a long time ago. It's truly frustrating that you have to wait till the 11th hour. And when you're talking about I have to address this reserve business, a pile of cash. Do you know, over the 3.5 years, we've reduced our reserves by over $1 million in this office? I inherited this money. I didn't acquire it. I inherited it. And we are down to 6 months if we can put this project together. We will be, in 6 months is a comfortable thing, and I know you're worried about the pandemic, but the way I've structured this office now, we are in good 6 months is a very comfortable. We are never going to be in bad shape. I never say never because you never know the unseen, but the way this office has been rearranged and structured, we are in tremendous shape there with 6 months reserves. But the waiting till the last minute, it's so frustrating, and I know you've all been around this, and this is probably not new to you. Maybe it is to me, especially from someone who's been self-employed for 30 plus years. I've done my diligence. It's just so frustrating. I don't understand. You know, there isn't an issue on there that cannot be resolved if we purchase this building, and we will not exceed that estimate. I can guarantee that, and I know there's no such thing as a guarantee, but believe me, I have never gone over budget when I build a project, and this one is no different. Thank you.
Citizen Rodrigo.
Thank you. With all due respect, you can write your own story. You cannot rewrite the truth. And yes, the questions I have tonight, I was very much in favor of this when we met to be able to sit, and I had a couple of questions. The questions I asked tonight, you told me that you would have those tonight whenever we first met in your office. And I did not ask back, and you have not messaged in weeks. You reached out yesterday, not in weeks, since then. So please do not give a false precedence for that. The questions that I asked tonight about the operations were the few questions I had whenever we met there. Again, I'm not against the project. And to be able to sit here and say that there should not be dialogue on a very substantial purchase, as if dialogue automatically says no to it, is wrong. There were questions about, over the past, about the reserves that were there, and you were doing a very nice job on making sure that the citizens are being able to get the services, not only what they did in the past, but actually expanded services. But please do not start to rewrite history and as if it was fact. The questions that I asked tonight were the same ones that we did there, and it was a very amicable conversation. I am not against this project. The costs I would like to see. But I think that we ought to be able to keep the conversation about the project, and once we start getting into personalities like that, I think you have veered off of what should be addressed in this hall and the reason why we are all here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I address that, please? Or no? I appreciate that, and you're right, but I will say when you were in my office You had said nothing about this project gave you heartburn, right? So I figured, okay, there's no problems. If I was wrong, I apologize. I don't want to make this a personal, believe me, it is not. Maybe I'm a little frustrated, but I had assumed when you told me that nothing about this project gave you any heartburn, I felt, okay, there are no questions. And if there were, you would have gotten back with me. And I apologize if I overstepped my boundaries there or assumed too much. I do apologize for that.
All right. So we're back to the original motion. Once again, Citizen Kelly, seconded by Citizen Graham, to approve. And that is the motion on the floor. And all in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 in this room. Voting aye.
Connie, could you send me your vote, please? $11 yeas and 0 nays. So it passes 21 to 11.
Next item, Madam Clerk.
We're at citizens' opportunity to address the electors, and I have not received any emails from anyone.
Are there any citizens who would like to address the electors at this time? I'm seeing none, so we would accept a motion to adjourn by Citizen Kelly, seconded by Citizen Riggenbach. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to mention also, just so that everyone in the downstairs area hears this, that when we voted on the moderator, there were 5 nays. So, just for the record.
Okay.
We're fine.
Do we not need to vote on nays at all? I mean, I know we voted yays, but don't we need to know the nays?
Well,
That happened
it was
twice.
it was over a majority of the electors voted yes, so it wouldn't have been more than that.
So we don't have to have the nays, the number of nays, but the number of nays is assumed in the minutes?
Yes.
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 So it's assumed that those same number of people are in the room, right?
Downstairs?
Yeah.
Yes. And I have Connie down there monitoring.
Okay.
Okay.
I couldn't hear a word she said, so.
She said that they were in the hallway and they had wanted to vote, so I think our security had checked out in the hallway and said there was no one there.
what he
So
said.
that's why we didn't.
Okay, so we're going to call the regular meeting of the Peoria City Council to order right now. Welcome Joe Deacon and his listening audience at WCBU, as well as Cable Channel 22. Madam Clerk, the council mics are open for roll call.
Mayor Ardis. Mayor Ardis. Councilmember Ali.
Present.
Councilmember Sear. Here. Councilmember Grayeb.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Montalongo. Here. Thank you. Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Euler.
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Here.
And Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Here.
You have a quorum present, Mr.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. In accordance with Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2020-69, which limits meetings to the lesser of 25 persons or 25% of the overall room capacity, and Executive Orders 2020-07, 33, 44, and 59, requiring the provision of video, audio, or telephonic access to meetings, as well as the CDC recommending social distancing of at least 6 feet between persons. City Hall has implemented changes and restrictions for the City Council meetings on November 10th, 2020, while complying with the Open Meetings Act. The council meeting will be conducted in person with members of the council and some staff present in council chambers with plexiglass barriers, and department heads in room 404 with the ability to remotely answer questions while maintaining a 6-foot distance. Council chambers has a room capacity restriction of 25 persons at a time, which may result in a wait for members of the public to enter. Temperature screenings are required upon entry to City Hall, and face coverings are required while inside. Members of the public and media are also invited to watch through the live stream on the City of Peoria's website, YouTube, television channel 22, or listen through WCBU radio. Submissions for public comment were received through the City Clerk's office. The agenda, minutes, and video podcast of the meeting will be available online through the city's website. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to join us and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I would also like us all to keep the family and friends of Bonnie Hester, former county board member, longtime leader of Peoria, especially in the South Side, who has recently passed. So we would like to keep Bonnie and her family in our thoughts and prayers this evening. We have a couple of proclamations this evening. We're going to start with the 100th anniversary of Born Paint. Whereas the City of Peoria is proud to celebrate Born Paint Company on the occasion of their 100th anniversary. And whereas the business was started in 1920 and was taken over by the current family's ownership shortly after the Second World War, when Herb Weidinger and a partner bought the business. Mr. Weidinger came from a long line of salesmen and found success very quickly. He became the sole owner in 1972. And whereas Born Paint Company is now in their 4th downtown location, they specialize in a variety of paint for multiple projects, including automotive, industrial, and interior and exterior house paint. They even expanded to a second location in Bloomington in 2008. Diversification of product, excellent customer service, and a knowledgeable staff have been at the heart of their longevity. And whereas Herb Weidinger's grandsons, Paul and Pat Barris, now serve as president and vice president, respectively. They started working in the retail space and warehouse when they were young, which gave them the knowledge of all the aspects of the business. When asked about the secret to their success, Paul responded, "If you're fair and honest with your customers and give them what they need, you're bound to stay in business." And whereas Born Paint Company has many employees who have over 20 years of service. They are longtime supporters of community projects like the Big Picture Initiative and the Peoria Art Guild's Fine Art Fair. And whereas they've been in their current location at 317 Walnut Street since 1975. When word of a new baseball stadium was coming, they decided to put a mural on the side of their building. Miriam Graff, a local artist and customer, designed the mural to include a colorful showcase of their products that also featured her talents in painting animals. She made certain that she included one special element, the initials of Mr. Weidinger, on the lion's pocket as a tribute to their family's legacy. Now, therefore, I, Jim Artis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, do hereby recognize and celebrate the 100th anniversary of Born Paint in Peoria, Illinois. I know that due to COVID and a couple other considerations, the Barris family wasn't able to be here with us this evening. We do want to send our sincere thanks out to them for keeping this business in our community for a century now. And they've employed a lot of people. It's nice to see a family business that's stayed in that location for a long time and continued to do well. So the Barris name is very known and well respected in our community and outside of this community because of the service they delivered. I think Paul's comment about being fair and honest with customers and giving them what they need is definitely a motto that Born Paint has held for all of these years. So we would like to thank them for their continued investment in our community. Councilmember Moore, I know you brought this proclamation forward and you'd like to speak as well.
Just briefly, I will go ahead and take their proclamation and deliver it to them. I became aware of their 100th anniversary when I was in there buying paint and talked to them, and you're right, their brothers Paul, Pete, and Pat were all there still working in that business, and were very helpful for the specialized paint that I was looking for. So thank you for that. I appreciate the council giving this proclamation to them.
Thank you very much, and we'll count on you to deliver that for us. Thank you very much. Councilman Grabe, do you have a comment on that?
All I can say is that I like my big box department store, but I love small business even more. And when I try to match paint for my house, which is in a historic district, we try to get an exact match. And I just went down there, Councilor Moore, and the first district, the proud first district, went to Pete, and they have a perfect match. I mean, it's unbelievable. And we're so fortunate to have small businesses like Born, so many small businesses in Peoria. And I know you're delighted to have them in the first district. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we have National Apprenticeship Week. We have two representatives here tonight. We have Paula Nachtrieb from Workforce Operations at ICC, and we also have Robert Sweigel, who is the director with the Mid-Central Illinois Regional Council of Carpenters Joint Apprenticeship and Training Committee, both who will welcome to make comments as soon as I read your proclamation. Whereas National Apprenticeship Week is in its 6th year of raising awareness of the vital role that apprenticeships provide to create a qualified and highly skilled workforce in the city of Peoria and across the nation. And whereas the advancement and well-being of the United States of America depends upon the continued development of skilled workers in their chosen fields. And whereas an ever-growing number of job creators and career seekers are discovering the benefits of an apprenticeship's unique learn-while-you-earn model. And whereas the City of Peoria recognizes that robust apprenticeship programs provide tangible values to job creators and apprentices with the potential to increase productivity, improve diversity and inclusion, and reduce recruitment and training costs, while providing a pathway to prosperous careers for job seekers. Now, therefore, I, Jim Artis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, do hereby recognize November the 8th through the 14th, 2020, as National Apprenticeship Week in Peoria, Illinois. Paula, would you like to come forward and give us a few words of wisdom, please?
Thank you very much. On behalf of Illinois Central College, I'd like to thank the City of Peoria for recognizing the value of apprenticeships. Apprentices at ICC participate in on-the-job training while receiving a wage, and then also attending Illinois Central College for related technical instruction in both manufacturing and and IT occupations. ICC is proud to serve this community in preparing a high-skilled workforce and meeting the needs of our regional employers. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming down. Mr. Sweigel?
Thank you very much tonight. This is a great honor for me tonight for this proclamation that you're giving for the skilled labor. I represent skilled labor of one of the various skilled crafts for Central Illinois. We have, at our facility, we have approximately 450 registered apprentices. What I mean by registered is that they're registered with the federal government that guarantees a couple things to the apprentices. Number one is their related instruction. When they come into our apprenticeship program, they go through a set of training standards, and they go through a set of the classes that they take. They take over the 4 years. Our apprenticeship is broken down into 4 years. About 80% of their learning is all on the job. The other 20% is at the school. But when they come into the program, they go through 640 hours of related instruction in 3 different components: health and safety training, they do general skills, and they do specialty training. So when these apprentices go on the job, they're learning all 3 of these crafts, and then they go out onto the job and they perform these crafts, such as like the bridge that was just resurfaced. We had a lot of certified welders. That's one of the things that we teach at our facility. A lot of the apprentices can become certified. That's a specialty that they would learn, a certification. And these are the components of all apprenticeships that all the skilled trades are teaching at all their facilities. And it's just a great opportunity for young people to get in. And the average age of our apprentice right now is about 26, but they come in and they have that opportunity. They work under the collective bargaining agreement, that they're getting their pensions, and they're getting all their skilled training, and it's just a great opportunity for any young person to go into today. And we're just delighted for this, and great honor for me to receive this proclamation on behalf of all the skilled trades. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to approve the minutes of the joint city council and town board meeting held on November 20.
Seconded by Councilmember Grab. Any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously, Madam Clerk.
Is actually a township item under this meeting, but it's 20-275, and it's a request from the town officials to approve the October 2020 actual expenditures and to approve the November 2020 anticipated expenditures for the town.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Move for approval.
Motion to approve, seconded by Trustee Moore. Discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at the consent agenda. 20-276 is a request to approve a home rule volume cap allocation for private activity bonds to Illinois Assist MCC program and Tri-County River Valley Development Authority. 20-277, there is a yellow handout on your desk that goes with this item. This is a request to approve the transfer of control of the grantee in the franchise agreement dated January 8th, 2015 between the City of Peoria and ITV3 LLC. 20-278 is a request to approve a resolution in support of an application to the Illinois Department of Transportation for funding under the 2020 Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program for extending the Rock Island Greenway multi-use path from Park Avenue to the existing Riverfront Trail on Spring Street. 20-279 is a request to receive and file the month ended September 30th, 2020 unaudited financial report, and 20-280 is a Greater Peoria Mass Transit District's 2020 audited financial statements with a request to receive and file. That completes your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Items to remove from consent this evening, Councilman Euler.
20-276.
276. Okay. Any other items to remove from consent? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the remaining items. Councilman Regenbach, seconded Councilman Kelly. Seeing no discussion, please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
20-276 is the home rule volume cap allocation.
Councilmember Willer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to defer 30 days.
We have a motion to defer, seconded by Councilmember Reckriegel. Any discussion on the deferral? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at regular business. 20-281 is a communication from the City Manager, Corporation Counsel, and Human Resources Director with a request to approve the 2020 Affirmative Action Plan.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a short slide presentation to just walk through with the presentation of the 2020 Affirmative Action Plan. The plan was sent to all the council previously by our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Dr. Faris Muhammad, who has actually left the employment of the city and is now the Chief Equity Officer for the City of Lawrence, Kansas. What I will just quickly do is quickly provide a short overview of the Affirmative Action Plan for you. This is really a tool that's designed for assisting the city in detecting, diagnosing, and correcting any barriers to equal opportunity that may exist in our hiring practices. It requires that the city to take affirmative steps to encourage and promote equal opportunity, to create an environment free from discrimination, and to address any barriers to equal opportunity. And it helps us to identify and correct any underutilization that we may have in any kind of job classification, and to establish procedures to monitor and examine its employment practices and decisions. So what's in the plan that's in front of you? There's several items that are included in this plan. There's the statement of the applicable policies that we have. There's a profile of our organization. There's an analysis of the composition of our job groups, which are broken out by the different types of jobs that we have. We then do an analysis of the geographic availability of minority and women to look at where within this region they would be available to fill those jobs. We then compare the existing workforce with the estimated availability of those potential candidates. If we need to develop placement goals, we do so, and then we identify any problem areas by organizational unit and job group, and then we have just really have a section that talks about what are our action-oriented programs towards hiring, selection, and recruitment. So just some quick demographics that come out of the plan. The composition of the workforce that we were looking at was 666 employees last year. That included the Peoria core employees that we had, so that's the reason why it's a little bit larger than the numbers that we've had in our budget. Overall, we had 23.72% were minorities, 137 women. So 158 minorities, 137 or 20.57% women. Of our new hires, we had 150 new employees that were hired in 2019 that we analyzed. 76 of those 152 or 50% were minorities. 28.95% or 44 women were hired during that period of time as well. From a promotion standpoint, we had 18 employees promoted in 2019. That included 4 minorities and 3 women. And then we had between terminations and retirements. In termination, I mean that to be anyone that leaves the organization, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, as well as retirements. We had 124 employees that ended their service to the city. 55 were minorities and 36 were women. So as we, and this work was done by Berkshire and Associates. Berkshire did the analysis for us and worked through this. They were recommended to us. They've done work for ICC in the past, and so we worked with them to have them look at our workforce analysis and to do this kind of work. Some of the conclusions that they looked at when we started to look at it by organization and availability was that minorities and women are not significantly underrepresented or concentrated in any particular organizational unit. There is no policy or practice excluding minorities or women from any departments, nor is there any racial or sexual discrimination in the selection process. when they started to look at the availability analysis, they did indicate that in some cases, the number of people that we have in actual positions is less than the estimated availability. And when they drilled down into that, where they found that the area that we need to focus on is actually concerning the number of the number of females that we have in the skilled trades, that was the area that we needed to focus on. And I think that's one area that we're going to have to really look at, not only whether we're hiring electricians, for example, or whether we're hiring other skilled trades, that we're looking at not only trying to find minority candidates, but also finding female candidates as well. So some of the goals that came out of the plan that they recommended and that they wanted us to really look at from a recruitment and selection process, that we continue to actively encourage applicant referrals, particularly for minorities and women, that we continue with our orientation program to inform new hires of their equal employment responsibilities, the promotional opportunities, our city rules, ways to alleviate problems, that we continue to work with local organizations that are contacted when we're looking for minority and female referrals, and that we continue the efforts that we undertook this past year, which was targeted recruitment efforts for qualified minority and female applicants, whether that's on the internet or where we've actually gone out, for example, with police and fire, and we've gone to historically black colleges and universities in order to try and recruit. From a selection standpoint, they noted that we continue to provide guidance to our supervisory personnel, that our tests that we administer are job-related and are applicable to all who take the test that are applying for the job. Our application forms do not contain any discriminatory questions, and that we do not and will not use any selection techniques that can be improperly used to discriminate against minorities or women. So the next steps in the process is that we're going to continue to implement our current hiring practices with our continued goal of trying to hire a workforce that is reflective of the city of Peoria. And I think that's different than what you'll see as you dig into this analysis here, because this analysis looks at the legal analysis, which is as we start to hire people, minorities and women, into our workforce, they're looking at where those minority and women are coming from, and they're coming from the metro area. So our catchment area for employment is larger than just the city of Peoria. And so when we look at it in those terms, we're setting a higher goal for the city of continuing to try and stretch and reach to make sure that we're filling our positions for a workforce that is representative of what the city of Peoria looks like, which is different than what our region looks like. And so that's one of the aspects that we're really trying to do. And we also know going into this year that we're in a state of flux. We've offered a voluntary separation plan to the fire that ended in October. We've offered an early retirement incentive to employees that are participants in IMRF that will run through July 31st. And we've had workforce reductions as part of the budgetary process. So we need to come back and redo this plan again in 2022, when we kind of see where the dust settles on all of the workforce changes that we've had this year. Because I think the plan that you see here in this snapshot that we have today is going to look a lot different after we do this again beginning in 2022, because we'll have a different workforce albeit it'll be a smaller workforce, but we'll have a different composition of the workforce, and we need to look at that. So then you can start to see some trends that go along with that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of a 105-page document. So.
I have Councilmember Moore up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, on page 6, where it indicates selection guidance to supervisory personnel, what does that mean exactly?
What that means is that as we go through the selection process, there's guidance provided by the Human Resources Department on the selection process, and they're providing guidance to the supervisory personnel about how to make sure that we're interviewing people and that we're free from discrimination, or we're not using any kind of discriminatory questions through that selection and recruitment process. So that's what that means by the guidance to supervisory personnel.
So as it relates to recruitment and selection and hiring, is it our practice to hire someone in and then change their job description or rate of pay that they should receive after the posted position has been filled by that person?
I'm not sure what you're getting at. I mean, there could be that the nature of the job changes, and there are duties that are additional duties that are provided to the incumbent that then additional responsibilities are added to that person's job duties, so that then they would see a commensurate change in the job description. That's happened on occasions. I'm not sure of instances where it's gone the other way. If you know of any of those cases, I'd be happy to talk to you about that kind of offline. I'm just not aware.
That. Another question I have is on page 7, next steps, you indicate the city will plan on revising this plan again in 2022, which is after the conclusion of the workforce restructuring. I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we've not had an affirmative action plan in about 9 or 10 years. Is that correct?
I think it's been about 9 or 10 years since we've had an update to the affirmative action plan. So this has been updated now for 2020, which if council approves it tonight, that's what would go forward with. And then, we would be doing that again in 2022.
What steps are being implemented that would make sure that 9 or 10 year span does not occur again?
Well, I think that we're stating to you and affirming with you that this is our commitment to go forward with revising this plan again in 2022 and going into redoing this process so that we do this on an every other year basis. So
every other year? Okay. And so your office is the one that's held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. I had Councilmember Ali next.
Thank you, Mayor Artis. And thank you very much, Mr. Urich, for your work. And I also want to thank Dr. Muhammad for his work in working with Berkshire Associates and the staff. I think Human Resources played a role, and others in pulling together the data. So I appreciate that nudge and finally getting here after so many years. I do want to point out that affirmative action plans do not determine discrimination per se. They do determine whether there's underrepresentation of minorities and women, and also people with disabilities and veterans, but they don't actually go in and investigate whether discrimination based upon gender or based upon race is occurring, but they do pick up certain patterns based upon availability and underrepresentation for certain positions and so forth. But like Councilwoman Moore, I do want to make sure that we stay current with our affirmative action plan, and the federal government requires organizations like ours to have an affirmative action plan if we receive federal funds or have over 50 employees, which we have. And we have to update that plan on an annual basis. So while we plan on doing something comprehensive in another 2 years, we still need to conduct a workforce analysis and look at our numbers on an annual basis. So we want to see those numbers and our workforce analysis again, how we looked. I think this is a picture of how we looked in 2019. We want to see how we look in 2020 and how we look in 2021 as well. So again, I just want to say thank you for finally getting here, and I would move to approve the affirmative action plan for the city of Peoria.
Motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Moore. Additional discussion, Councilwoman Moore.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I would be remiss if I didn't also thank, there was a small group of folk who got together on a regular basis through the NAACP, who talked to Dr. Muhammad along the way to make sure this was done and that he had information that he needed. So I want to thank those individuals. I know I'm going to forget someone, but I want to acknowledge Reverend Marvin Hightower, Mr. Al Hooks, Dr. Rita Ali, Nina Gudis, she's an attorney, and Sherry Carter Allen. Thank you. I knew I would forget. And I want to thank Dr. Ali for her leadership in this, because with her, this being her background inside of ICC, it was instructional for us to know how to move this forward. So thank you, Dr. Ali, because she brought forward the company, the organization that actually did the analysis for us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
20-282 is a request to adopt an ordinance levying the taxes for fiscal year 2021 for municipal purposes for the city of Peoria.
Just for acknowledgement, the truth and taxation hearing was not required because there was actually a decrease in property taxes levied. So that's good news. Is there a motion? Motion to approve, Councilman Regenbach. Seconded, Councilmember Kelly. Discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
20-283 is a request to adopt a resolution adopting the 2021 revised annual budget for the city of Peoria.
Councilman Regenbach.
Move for the approval as presented.
A motion to approve. Is there a second? Second, Councilman Kelly. Discussion. Councilman Greb.
In my opinion, this budget blueprint leaves huge gaps in our public safety equation as it relates to our ability to clear snow rapidly in the event of a storm emergency, to patrol our streets, and also to provide adequate fire protection and to do the needed code enforcement that sustains real estate values. Having said that, I know that all of us cannot be that pleased with the budget because it's been so horribly affected by the pandemic, and none of us here could have contemplated what's actually occurred and affected all of us since the beginning of 2020. Accordingly, Manager, I do have a question to ask you. I don't have CNN, Fox News on right now, and everything is so volatile. But let's just say that a stimulus package is passed, perhaps even before the current administration were to leave office. Or let's say it's not passed this year, but it's passed in 21. Now, by approving this tonight, let's say something's passed before the first of the year. Are we going to need a supermajority to amend if we get money in here?
You would still need, if this gets adopted tonight, this would be the budget that would be set for the fiscal year. So you would need a supermajority vote for adding anything back into the budget. If hypothetically we get a large stimulus package that would come in and council had that desire to want to put something back in, it would still require that 8 vote. This actually sets that, this sets the appropriation ordinance and that.
So if we approve this tonight and we get a stimulus pack before the first of the year, and believe me, I'm not seeing around corners. None of us, I don't think, is. But anything's possible with the volatility of everything going on. And all the people in this country who are hurting and in need of some help, in our small businesses, which are struggling. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again because it's true. I'm wondering if you feel it's prudent for us to go ahead and approve it now, or wait maybe another meeting or so. I mean, I'm open to discussion on this. I just don't want it to be onerous to come up with 8, although I don't think, but I can't predict what this body might do at any given time. But you think it's prudent to go ahead and do this now?
I do. I think that if we're going to get a stimulus check from the federal government that's of such size that it would allow for us to put money back in for lost revenues, and there's enough money for us to look at restoring some of the cuts that have been made, I think my view is that there's probably going to be some unanimity amongst the council that we would go forward with that. So I'm not sure that the 8 vote would be that onerous in terms of the supermajority vote would be that onerous in terms of restoring anything that would come back at that point in time. Ideally, it's enough that we don't have to borrow next year. This spending plan still contemplates $10 million of borrowing, and so hopefully we're talking about a number that's over and above that $10 million, so we don't have to do that.
And probably any stimulus package, of course, would be aimed directly at helping municipalities, for example, if we're included in this pack, municipalities that have been, their revenue picture has been impacted by this horrible pathogen. And so we would then have to demonstrate where we have been impacted in order to...
I think we could, with very good faith, show that between this year and next, we're looking at least $36 million of lost revenue between both years. And I think we could easily point to that.
Yes.
And with where we are right now with the pandemic and where it's kind of turning, even this year, I'm concerned that as we go forward, that we may be in that situation if we have a long, extended mitigation session that we're in right now, which moves into the second phase, what that may do to overall spending in the region. But at this point in time, I think this is our best estimate of where we think 2021 is going to be. And I wish Washington would step up, quite frankly, and put some money on the table for municipalities and states and counties that have been really hit. And we're more than 10%. I think we're closer to 15% of the GDP output. And so to not support that size of the economy in terms of that support, and that now clearly that means that you have 85% of the economy that's coming from either the consumer or from small business, but 15% is still a large segment of the economy. And when we have a drag, we're going to pull down economic output nationwide if there isn't any kind of stimulus.
Well, with the way the contagion appears to be developing, and the number of people that have been impacted by it, and small businesses, of course, giant industries, it would appear to me that if it's not this year, it'll be next year. We will have some kind of a package that will probably be consensual. It may not be everything the Dems want or everything the Republicans want, but it could really help the people in our city whom we are sworn to represent as best we possibly can. So I think I have a lot of faith in my colleagues that if something were to come before the 1st, that we could navigate that, Manager. If not, in 21, we would just need a simple majority. Is that accurate?
So if it's done in 21, it would still require the supermajority because it would be an amendment to this spending plan. So really, it really would require that either way in terms of adding any kind of expense back in. Now, on the revenue side, recognizing additional revenue does not require any kind of vote of the council. That's simply just we would accept that revenue coming in. But it's what you do if you wanted to increase spending that would require the council to then take that supermajority vote to amend this spending plan that's there in front of you tonight.
So it would take a supermajority.
Even next year it would, yes.
Even next year?
Yes.
Because we would be adding.
Correct.
If we wanted to subtract,
If we wanted to subtract, it's a simple majority to reduce that spending plan. It's not, you're adjusting downward. That was the position that we've been in all this year as we've talked through 2020 and the 2020 budget about making those expenditure cuts and reductions that we need to live within our means.
is this based on new rules, Corporation Council that we've had? Because I go back a long time, and I don't, Manager, I'm not contradicting you. I'm just problem solving here. Did we change rules so that it's one vote for a subtraction versus another for an addition?
Good question, Councilman. No, the council rules on votes required, it did not change at all. The opinion that we gave was based on the statutory sections in the municipal code of what votes are required under the budget sections, and then what votes are required under the management form of government.
Can you say that one more time? Because there's this barrier right here. If I could make that clear, nothing's changed. It was that way in 95, for example, right?
I wasn't here in 95, so I can't tell you what the council rules were
The
at that
council
time.
rules can be changed, though, if we wanted to.
They could, of course. But the rules on budgets are imposed by state statute.
Okay, so this, what we're following here is not internal. You're saying this is a state rule as to how we would do our budget.
Correct. The votes required are a statutory requirement in the municipal code.
So the people in LaSalle, Illinois have to follow the same rule, or in, I hesitate to say Chicago because that might be different. But pretty much most cities in the state operate in accord with this same subtraction addition formula. Is that correct?
If they follow a budget rather than an appropriation system, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have Councilmember Ali next.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a similar question for clarification. So if we were to get any external funds above our budget, we could approve receiving them by just a simple majority. But if we were to spend those funds, we'd have to have a supermajority.
That is correct.
Is that correct? Any amount from 10,000 to 100,000 to $1 million.
If we were the recipient of $1 million grant, it requires a supermajority vote that would require the city council to vote to amend the budget ordinance to allow for that spending to occur during that year.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Montalongo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question for our city manager. In this 2021 budget, is there a property tax increase?
There is not.
There is not. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item? Councilman Kelly.
At the risk of extending this meeting, I would just like to compliment the manager, not only for this budget, but for the budget process that I've been sitting here for. So that's the last 2 years. I found your presentations, your explanations, quite understandable, and I would like to just acknowledge that from my perspective anyway, I think you've done a very good job for us, and thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I would like to echo Councilman Kelly and just try to briefly remind everyone that at this time last year we approved a budget that was putting close to $2 million in reserves. We had an economy that was rocking. The Civic Center was tearing it up. The hotels were full. Restaurants were doing well. We were probably 4% unemployed. And it really looked like it was going to be one of those years that we could remember in terms of finally had more pluses than minuses until what happened in March. And so, it is what it is in that respect, but the work that the city manager and his team were required to do from the middle of March until today in getting, this year's finances in order with some very difficult decisions, set the stage for maybe not so difficult, just to get the second year of the budget in place. But it was a lot of work by the manager and his staff, and we appreciate that. I think we all are keeping our fingers crossed and holding our breath that another disastrous round of COVID doesn't hit us hard at the end of this year and into the spring. But if it does, we'll have to go back and look at it harder. But Mr. Manager, to you and your team, thank you very much for a budget that actually started in March and ended at almost Thanksgiving is pretty crazy. So thank you for your efforts. Councilman Grabe?
Yes, having said that, I want to add something. I am glad we did not follow the initial recommendations that came when the pandemic hit. As all of you will recall, we cut $27 million in infrastructure. We had a recommendation to cut 27 police officers, 3 firehouses. We have trimmed public works down to the bone, not to mention our community development department. Those were not good recommendations, and they were hastily made, and I'm glad we did not do those things. So I have to feel that the way we've handled this is not excellent. I wouldn't even give it a grade of C. I don't want to be ungrateful, but if we had done what was initially recommended, we would have crippled the 2nd District. We would have crippled the city of Peoria, and we would have produced a budget with a monster face. Thank God we didn't do it. Thank God we had reasonableness in this room that caused us to stay our hand and not to destroy the city. On the other hand, I always like to say good things about our city administration, but the same time I have to say good things about the city administration. We have employees out there who are working their hearts out trying to deliver services to our citizens, and they're shorthanded. We have huge gaps in public safety. You all know that. You have to know it. We're trying to patrol a city where there are a lot of people who like to shoot pistols. And do terrible things. And we basically have only enough police to run from call to call. We have a huge gap in our fire rescue response. We need to do something about that. And for code enforcement. What code enforcement? I don't even know how Ross Black and Joe Doolin are able to keep their sanity. Seriously. And when that first storm comes, and it's coming, you'll have to take a look at what we've done to Public Works. Because Public Works is not going to be in a position to adequately deal with the crisis. So we will pray for better days ahead. I believe there are better days ahead, and I would hope that the people in Washington, D.C. will think about the citizens first, instead of some of the game playing that's going on right now. Well, the Congress recessed while the country suffers. I can't be happy about that, either as a city councilman or as a citizen of the United States of America. And the hurt sits in this city and in this land to this very moment. So I hope and pray there are better days ahead, and I believe there will be. And we're hearing good news about various things in the medical field, but we must realize we have cut nearly 300 full-time employees in the past 7 years. At some point, you are producing a city that cannot meet the needs of its people, and especially a needy district. And all of our districts are needy at this point. Some more than others. Manager, I do want to echo the words of Councilor Kelly. We thank you for your work. We know it's an inexact science making predictions, but I am glad that we did not follow the initial recommendations. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, I just have a quick question. What is your strategy for deploying any dollars that we receive over that which is expected to come in from the federal government, if at all, to go back and look at those areas where, as Councilman Graham has indicated, that have been seriously impacted, like code enforcement? Do you have a strategy for where to employ additional funds as they come in?
Thank you, Councilwoman. As I mentioned earlier, the first step would be to minimize any borrowing that we have. That's the first $10 million, just because of the long tail that will have in terms of the cost on an annualized basis. If we have to borrow $10 million, it really turns into a $20 million expense. So that would be first and foremost. Then from there, it will become a policy discussion that will bring back some options for the council to consider what to do next in terms of where we would go. So, and I would want to hear back from the council about where we would go. If we were in that, I hope we're in that position at some point in time. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this item? We have a motion and a second. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at unfinished business 20-182 is a request to adopt an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Code of the City of Peoria pertaining to short-term rental uses.
Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to defer 30 days.
Motion to defer. Is there a second? Councilman Kelly. Discussion on the deferral. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 10 ayes, 1 no. Councilmember Jensen. Madam Clerk.
20-231 is a communication from the mayor and city manager with a request to discuss a fire protection and police protection tax.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have another slide deck. Just very quickly, I just wanted to summarize where we left off this discussion at our last city council meeting. Was the direction from council was to come up with some advisory questions for the council to consider. So the Corporation Council and I had a discussion about several of those questions that we wanted to just walk through with you this evening. And just to remind you, the police and fire protection tax is an option for the council to consider. If you're going to increase that over 7.5 cents, it would require voter approval. But if we were to do it even with a binding referendum question, if you're going to put that on the April 6th ballot, the deadline is January 19th of 2021 to bring that forward. So we looked at really 3 options for you to consider. The first would be advisory questions on the police and fire tax. And we put together 3 options for the council to consider. The first being, shall the city of Peoria adopt a fire protection tax and then put the amount in? That can be, while it could be a binding question, it could also be an advisory question. So that was really there, looking at that as a fire protection tax. Following up, putting a second question on the ballot, which would be, shall the city of Peoria adopt a police protection tax in the amount of, and then you pick the dollar amount, which really is a council discussion up to that point. Or the third question could be to just simply not have 2, but to really structure it to say, shall the city of Peoria adopt a public safety protection tax for police and fire operations? And leave it as simple as that. That would be the advisory question that would be proposed. The second option was to look at an advisory question pertaining to police and fire pensions. And here we crafted a couple of questions just for you to consider. The first being, shall the city of Peoria increase its existing property tax levy to fully fund police and firefighter pensions by 2040 as required by state law? So again, making it clear that we're required to fully fund pensions by 2040 as required by state law, and then putting that question to the voters. The next option, shall the city of Peoria fully fund public safety pensions by 2040 by increasing the property tax levy for police and fire pensions? Here, again, just another way to reframe it, but we were looking at this as another option for council to consider. And then the third option is really just a question that would be more focused on the community's appetite for more taxes, and that was, shall the city of Peoria levy an annual tax for police and fire operations? And so we wanted to put together, a series of these questions for you to consider. We're still in this mode where it's discussion before we would come back. If there's something that council is comfortable with moving ahead with, we would be willing to put that together for council to act on that at the December 8th city council meeting, which will be the next regularly scheduled meeting. We'll talk about that under new business. But at this point, I think I would want to turn the floor over to the council, Mr. Mayor, to answer any questions that they may have about the proposed questions.
So the goal here is to see if we can come to a consensus on if the verbiage on one for us to put in the April ballot. So that's what the discussion would be open for, the information that the manager brought back this evening. Discussion. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I question the proposed language of the two questions for option 2. If I support this, I lean towards favoring asking the voters about their views on, or giving us advice or their views on issuing a tax to support and help pay for the fire and police pensions. But I think I'd prefer it to be worded more like the way the options are, or the questions are worded in option 1. I'm not quite sure why you're putting all of that in there. That I don't think it doesn't have to be a tax levy to fully fund it. It could just be a tax levy to help to pay for some of it. It doesn't have to be the full amount necessarily.
Well, one of the points I think we were trying to just structure it to say was number one, we have a requirement under state law to get to 90% funding by 2040. And so we were trying to craft that in a way that allowed to talk about this as, because that statutorily is what's considered full funding. If we're at 90% by 2040, we have met the statutory requirement where our pensions are fully funded. So, and based upon the discussion we had at the last city council meeting, that's going to take a significant amount of resources to move from where we are today to that point by 2040. So we were looking at and we can certainly tweak the language in an advisory ballot question much easier than if we were to actually have a binding tax referendum. So we were just simply looking at trying to structure it that way.
Okay, and I understand. I think it's important if we go this route to do it in a way that we educate the taxpayers and the citizens about the amount of money that we're going to be required to pay. So if you could word it in a way where, I don't know, refer to some of the things specifically that, by what's the year, by 2023, put the actual dollar amounts maybe that we're going to be obligated to pay, or how much we pay right now. We're paying $4.4 million. Is that right? Or, I think it'd be better if you were more exact.
Try and use it as an opportunity to educate the voters about the obligation, the financial obligation that we're facing with that.
And what the full dollar amount is, maybe. That's possible. I don't know how others feel about that, but I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. Councilman Regenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilwoman Jensen, I think you're hitting the nail on the head that the education piece is going to be critical to this. And And option 2, in my opinion, is a little, who's going to say, I mean, although right now maybe a lot of people would say, don't do what the state tells you to. But I mean, number 2 is kind of ambiguous in my opinion, because if it's state law requiring us to it, we have to do it. So I'm leaning right now, of course, when they hear more dialogue, to number 1, I think, because it talks about a specific, it would offer a dollar amount, and I think that's important to see. And that being said, I also like, I guess perhaps let me back up. Corporation Counsel, how much information can be on the question and how much of it needs to be the education piece that would accompany it down in other forms?
That's a good question. We could put a total dollar amount. We could put sort of what the 2040 goal is for the pension to be funded. That's about the limit of what you want for the question. If you look at, for example, the questions that were on the ballots, sort of statewide in earlier this year for referenda, you saw a lot of questions for various fire protection districts. Those weren't incredibly useful for us to look at guides to help give you some options here, but you'll see that they're generally sticking to dollar amounts or rates when they're looking at either binding or non-binding referenda. Other than that, it comes down to the education piece and the factual information the city can put out.
This with a smile on my face. I mean, we can't say we have to come up with $8 million in 2022 to fund pensions. We can't say that, can we?
We could attempt to come up with, that is factually accurate. You know, well, I don't know if that exact number is factually accurate, but depending on the number we have to come up with, we could certainly phrase the question to state, you know, would you be willing to entertain a property tax levy to reach X amount of dollars in certain year as required by state statute to fund pensions?
I think it's important, and Councilwoman Jensen, maybe if I'm understanding you right, that we offer as specific information as possible, and that we paint the picture of what the situation really is, so folks understand this isn't us pitting anybody against anybody, but this is the dollars and cents that, because of impact from state unfunded mandates, et cetera, that this is the reality that we're caused to support. So thank you. That's all for now, Mr. Mayor.
I think one of the things to keep in mind as we talk through this is there's not an actuary alive that will tell us how we can possibly get to 90% funded by 2040. I mean, it's not actuarially possible. I guess it is actuarially possible, but everybody would leave town if they had to meet that tax requirement. So I think we need to potentially keep that thought in mind when it comes to asking about whether or not we want to get to a fully funded pension by 2040, because it's and you know, possibly if the state legislature ever goes back to work, they're potentially going to be talking about reamortization of that number. So hopefully that'll be helpful. So I think maybe we can focus on how to frame the question up to get some assistance, you know, for those operations without committing to a 2040 level. I had Councilman Kelly. I had Councilman Euler. Did you turn yours off? Okay. Councilman Kelly and then Councilman Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second your remarks that there isn't any way, the way we're going, that we're going to meet this obligation. There isn't any way to do it. And I don't mind asking the public that much. Well, I do mind, because it makes it look as though we've got a plan, and we don't have a plan. Now, it seems to me that we can either lay off another 300 employees or whatever. We can raise our taxes to make it not just the highest in the country, but maybe 50% higher than any place in the country. But you know, these kind of choices are silly. They're crazy. We need to have a real discussion and not put this off until some referendum in April that isn't going to solve the problem, and it's going to make our citizens seem like, oh well, they've got a plan. They've got a plan. Now it seems to me that the only way that we can even come close is to aggressively grow our city, clear the decks out of our economy, clear the cobwebs out, make this, and we can do it, the absolute best place in the state of Illinois to do business. Okay? The route we're going, the route we've been going, won't work. The mayor was correct. There isn't any plan we can make as long as we keep our status quo. There isn't any way we can get to the end of the game. And it's only 20 years. So I think this is nice, and it's, the language is this or the language is that and whatever. I think it makes no difference. We either pray that Springfield will get religion, which I don't see any hope for. Just go berserk with our reforming our tax system, getting into heavy deregulation, just really clearing the decks and making our city a growing city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I had Councilmember Graham next.
Councilor Kelly, I 100% agree. We need to bake a bigger economic pie for Peoria, and we need to endeavor to do just that. In the meantime, I believe this is a failed mission to put this on the ballot, because I believe our citizens expect us to fund public safety without creating special taxing districts to do it. They're going to just laugh at this. They're going to say, forget the hotels. Yes, I brought it up again. Forget all the things that you waste money on to go for the core basic services. That's what they're going to say, and they're going to say that's the first thing you fund. And as I said at a previous meeting, I will not support this. This is crazy. But before I came into the council chambers tonight, at least one of our state lawmakers, probably two here, in the past couple of days have indicated that there is no reason in the world why they can't meet with us. Great dispatch, since there's not going to be a veto session now. So, since we know that many of our problems, not all of them, but many of them are extrinsically imposed on us because of the mismanagement that's occurred over many decades, bipartisan-wise, we have that discussion sooner rather than later and forget the folly of putting this on the ballot. Education, you're going to educate people in the midst of a pandemic? Hell, we can't even talk to our neighborhood groups right now, except through the virtual lens, and a lot of my citizens constituents don't do that. Let's just be honest. Educate. We're going to educate them. In the midst of a pandemic, when we can't even put people into a room, we're going to put, 10,000 people into a Zoom? I mean, come on. Let's be about the business of having that meeting with our state lawmakers. We have a great delegation, and they work hard to bring our tax dollars into our community. They work hard together, in bipartisan fashion, to do this. There's not going to be that fall veto session, and they're happy to come and do this sooner rather than later. Let's do that. And just call off this nonsense here, which we know has failed. It's going to fail. And you know it's going to fail. And as Councilor Lee said, you're putting our employees on the ballot as if they shouldn't already be funded. So that's what I'm going to vote for, getting our lawmakers together for that meeting we've been talking about. Thank you.
I had Councilman Sear next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree for most of the things that my colleagues have said, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Graham. Just some comments that we just agreed a few minutes ago to a budget, 2021 budget. And there's comment about, well, we're in good shape. We didn't raise any taxes, any property taxes, which is true. But we had comments before about, and I'm sure all of you has received some calls about the difference between a fee and a tax. And I can see 4 or 5 things, increases in fees that our citizens will see in 2021 that nobody talks about. No, they'll pay more for garbage. They'll pay more for pension fee. They'll pay more for stormwater utility fee. I mean, our sewage, I get calls all the time how much our sewage bills have doubled the last few years. And I can go on and on. There's been a lot of increase, so there's no status quo, Mr. Kelly, like he said. I mean, we've been going backwards in our finances, and not to talk about, I don't know if it's a record, but I talk to our Mr. Manager all the time. But I mean, I voted tonight for a balanced budget, but it's really a budget. It's a good budget. I've told them before, it's the best one since the 4 years I've been here. But we still took on almost $20 million in new debt to have a balanced budget. In my line of work, I mean, it's a budget, but I can't call it a balanced budget. But last meeting, we talked about pension. I got all the numbers from our city manager, and the mayor made comment before, and it's an impossible task to get. I think the number was $850 million that we need the next 20 years to get to 90%. It's just impossible. Even I like how positive my colleague, Mr. Kelly, is, but we would need at least 40 to 45 million of new businesses every year. So, and we all know that none of our constituents, all these fees are going up. The taxes are not going up. The fees are going up. I mean, nobody wants to raise the taxes. So I think it's really a waste of time, because when I was, I'll call it a rookie, a beginner in this business 4 years ago, and I thought I'm going to come over here and help with schools. And I found I got nothing to do with schools. And I'm going to try to help out with pension. And we have nothing to do with pension. So I think we need to really talk to our people in Springfield. If they're not willing to help us out and go back to the bargaining table with all of these union, I mean, I don't know how we can survive. I really don't know. And I think I appreciate a lot of the comment. I mean, we have a lot of employees. It's like we put them on the ballot every time. We're put them. They're part of the conflict. I mean, I hate to be an employee of the city. I mean, it must be for our manager, which is the head guy, it must be terrible for him to try and motivate our employees, because they're always the bad guys. So I'm not really willing to ask for a referendum. We all know that the answer is going to be no, and I just don't want. I mean, our employees feel bad enough the way they are. I'm just against really a referendum. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I have Councilmember Riggenbach next.
Thank you again, Mayor. It's great to talk about growing the pie and talking to Springfield, but we just passed the 2021 budget. But Mr. Manager, I was just trying to skim through my book here. The pension obligation will be up $8 million in 2022. Is that correct? Ballpark?
Roughly in a ballpark, yes, because you're losing the $2 million in the pension fee.
So, we absolutely, Councilman Graves, need to get our state legislators in here. And I think some of us have been having some offline conversations, just reminding them of the magnitude of this problem. But I sincerely doubt it's going to happen in time for 2022. So I'm not saying this is the answer, but I think this is a critical education piece to make sure that the public understands that this has nothing to do with a hotel. This has nothing to do with the other things that we're accused of. This has to do with an unfunded mandate from Springfield. And we are doing our best to address it head on. We absolutely need to do everything in our power to make that pie bigger, to make the Peoria the most business-friendly place in central Illinois. We have certain things that we can control that we need to do, but the reality is we need $8 million in 2 years. So that's going to affect everything that we do. That's going to affect code enforcement. That's going to affect snow removal. That's going to affect everything again. So let's not sugarcoat it. We bought ourselves some time with 2021. And we keep hoping that there's going to be some help from Washington coming our way yet. But we have to absolutely level with our constituents and make sure they understand what the situation is here. And it's not a pretty picture, but it's a picture that we can work together to find a way out of. But this is just a critical part of it, to put the dollars and cents out there. And I think once people see what the actual magnitude of the cost is, then they'll look at the deliberations we take here on Tuesday night differently. So, yeah, I think we need honest, straightforward, transparent, use whatever adjective you want, but we cannot sugarcoat this pill to anybody any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any lights here. I think maybe one thing to keep in mind is we all have, I think, a pretty strong feeling of where most people are on increases in taxes in Illinois. As we've said before, our portion of a property tax bill is 12 cents on the dollar. So there does need to be an educational component to this, but I also think that even though we may think we know where this is going, having an opportunity to, for the first time in a long time, to actually ask our constituents their opinion on this, I don't know how there's a negative to that, and I don't expect that the council would wait until after the April election to start these discussions. I mean, there's been advocates to have a discussion with our state legislators as soon as possible, which we should do. And then the ongoing discussion after that, to Councilman Kelly's part, about how to have a larger strategy. But I think, given our citizen taxpayers an opportunity to weigh in on this, I don't know why we would not give them that opportunity when, some people would just assume that they expect to have all these things paid for through their property taxes, but when they find out what that number is, then maybe it changes a little bit, or maybe it changes a lot once they realize what that is. So that the education will be very important, and I expect that that people on any side of this issue will take it upon themselves to provide that education. I just think that we should give our citizen taxpayers an opportunity to voice that, and again, not wait until whatever the date is in April to start having the bigger discussion with the city manager and the rest of the team on a plan to move our community forward in spite of Springfield. Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question for clarification. Mr. City Manager, you indicated that December the 8th, we'd need to make a decision. On the document, on the communication, it has December the 7th on the bottom. Is that for something else?
Yeah. Thanks, Councilwoman. If we're talking about the primary ballot, we would need something done before that December date. If we're talking about the general municipal election in April, it's January, I think I had it up here.
19th.
January 19th of 2021.
Councilman Regenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the sake of getting this off the dime, if you will, I would move that we go with option 1, asking the 2 questions. Should the city of Peoria adopt a fire protection tax in the amount of what percentage to be named later? And should the city of Peoria adopt a police protection tax in the amount of X?
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Ruckriegel. Discussion, Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My impression in looking at the agenda was that this was to be a discussion. And when the discussion was over, I guess my thought was we would among ourselves keep discussing it and keep discussing it. I don't know that that one of these options is up for a vote tonight. Rather, I think that the manager has shown us a number of options which we can talk about tonight, but talk about further, but I don't know that there's any decision necessary this evening. So I'm wondering if Mr. Rickenbach, if you withdraw the motion or you want to go forward.
So this isn't a final. This is so this is moving towards having legal and the city manager bring back potential language wrapped around option number 1.
I understand that, Mr. Mayor.
We'll come back and you can continue having discussions amongst all of ourselves if this motion, either way on this motion. So I
was just referring to the fact that the agenda said discussion. If we take a vote now, that's okay, but it seems like that was not the intent. But that's fine.
I had Councilman Euler next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support this if the maker of the motion would be agreeable to change it from protection to pension. I think it needs to be clear to the voters that this is in relation to the pension situation that we're in. And I guess just to add some additional commentary to this, I do think that it's imperative that we take this step to get the feedback of our constituents, and I think the general election ballot is the time to do it because that's when there will be the greatest amount of constituent turnout, and that's what this is all about, is getting our constituents' feedback on how they feel about this issue and the situation that we're in, and the steps that we will have to evaluate in the future to take to address that. And while I know that everybody has a little bit of a good feeling about the fact that we just gave direction to pass a budget that's balanced for 2021, there's a huge cliff after that. and we are going to be in the same ballpark that we've been in the last 6 months, talking about whether we're going to make cuts or raise taxes or fees or what we're going to do about that. And I think that we need to get ahead of that discussion and get the general public's feedback now before we start to enter those waters again and have to make some of those decisions. And those decisions come with a lot of pain, and this council seemed to have a lot of trouble coming to consensus on what direction to make, to the point of even just sitting and doing nothing for weeks and months on end. And I think that we need to know whether or not this option is or is not on the table for the future. Thank you.
I have Councilmember Jensen next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That I prefer option 2 as well, that it be limited to the pensions. So I'm not sure what the motion is now. If I think Councilman Riggenbach said he was agreeable to changing that. Could somebody read it, or do you want to repeat it?
Madam Clerk.
I think he was talking about making a motion to approve option 1, and the first question would be, shall the city of Peoria adopt a fire pension tax in the amount of whatever? And then the second question is, shall the city of Peoria adopt a police pension tax in the amount of whatever? Is that correct?
But then I guess as a follow-up question to Corporation Council, aren't they two? If it's the pension, then it's a different type of tax. Is that right?
Well, we were just discussing that. I think it would actually be slightly misleading to have the question read, shall the city of Peoria adopt a fire pension tax? We already levy pension taxes, and the council has the authority to do so in an unlimited amount to fund the pensions that are required. So it would actually be an increase in an existing pension tax.
So if we want to do it, if we want to limit it to the pension, it needs to be more like option 2. Is that right?
That would be my suggestion, yes.
So for what it's worth, I support going that route and focusing on the pension part. That's why I was sort of leaning toward agreeing with Councilman Kelly on maybe it's too soon to be voting on the exact language since it's just discussion, but give Corporation Council direction on language and where we want to go, because we still have time if it's not till the general election.
If I could, Councilman, maybe what you're giving us is direction to finalize questions on one of the 3 options. And we can come back to you with 2 questions or 3 questions that then you can decide from. But we just need direction from you, because we looked at this and said the advisory questions are so broad that we can go in so many different directions. What does council want to focus in on so that we can craft a question that then you're comfortable with? So tonight I would look at this as saying you're narrowing down the focus from the 3 options to 1, and then from there we'll come back to you with questions that you can act on December 8th or even January 12th that could then make it to the ballot in April. Okay, we're kind of narrowing down the route, the path that we're going down.
Okay.
I had Councilman Graham next.
Well, the item here would appear to be quite innocuous. It's communication from the mayor and the city manager with the request to discuss the fire protection and police protection tax, but pretty quick out of the box, we had a motion to approve one of these possibilities. So, in the spirit of how this is worded, I think we should discuss fire protection tax, police protection tax, or maybe neither of the above. Maybe have a question like this on the ballot in the spring. Do you favor closing firehouses and laying off police to achieve a balanced budget? It's all in a matter of how you ask the question. The way you ask the question is going to determine the outcome. Because I have a question I'd love to ask them, and that's one of them right there. And I'll bet you my constituents say, no. And then if you say, do you think it should be the responsibility of municipal governments to help subsidize hotels and ballparks, and you put that out there, we'll see what the answer is on that one, folks. Yeah, I can play these games because that's what these are. These are games. Say it again. There is an expectation that we fully fund personnel. And when you start saying pension, it's an attempt to demonize the people who have worked for the city all these years, protected us, the people who are the bedrock of our society, whether it be teachers, police officers, firefighters. We need to blame them. They're public enemy number one, the pensioners. See, that's the psychological ramification to it. We all know pensions are part of personnel costs. Everybody who serves in a municipal body understands that. There are rare occasions, I will admit this, where the taxpayer will say, yes, I'm in favor of raising taxes. I can remember a number of decades ago, the voters in Peoria Public Schools District 150 voted to raise the educational tax rate. It was fairly new in the education system at that point, and we were able to do the education piece. We weren't in the middle of a pandemic. Come on. And then I remember, and I'm very proud of this, Councilor Ruckriegel, and I'm proud of the job you do with the library system. We voted by like a 72% margin, and that's indicated in one of the memos from our city manager to increase funding for our library system. So there are times when the people will do this, but you have to have a robust education effort. And folks, I do have trust and confidence in the people of Peoria. I really do. But how in the world do we have a mature conversation in the midst of a situation where we're not even supposed to go out to eat? People can't run their small businesses now, and somehow we're going to do an education piece over all this. We didn't have that occurring when we made the case for raising the educational tax rate for Peoria Public Schools. We did not have a pandemic when we made the case to more properly and adequately fund our wonderful library system. So there are so many different reasons why this would not be the time to do this. And frankly, there's 11 of us here. We have a mayor, we have 5 district council people, and 5 at-large people. Where have we been for the years we've served? How come we haven't been, or have we, been telling our constituents what the grim math is? What these Malthusian projections of disaster portend? How come we haven't been doing that? We have been doing it. I have been doing it. But reasonable people will agree on how best to address the problem and how best to frame the problem. This isn't the way to do it. Heck, when I asked for public meetings consistent with social distancing and mask wearing to discuss what some of you wanted to do and did do, cutting firehouses when we shouldn't have cut one of them. Oh, no, we can't do that. We are here. We should make the decisions right now. That's what I heard. Oh, no, we are not accepting our responsibilities as elected officials. We don't have time to go out there and discuss what the ramifications are on fire rescue services for our citizens whom we're sworn to protect in their homes. We are elected to make these decisions. Now, all of a sudden, there's a shift in philosophy. Oh, now's the time that we're going to have engagement. Well, we were going in a bad direction then when we could have had meetings, but it appears to be even worse now. So I don't understand the lack of consistency here as we deliberate on this particular matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have Councilman Euler next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't see this as any lack of consistency whatsoever. I think it's getting future input about a future decision. We are not under the gun on this. We don't have to make a decision today on how we fix this year's budget. We're getting public input on how we fix a budget 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years from now and how the public feels about that. So this is absolutely the time that we should be doing it, is now rather than waiting until the day that we have to take that vote on the 2022 budget to decide that we need to figure out where our public input is going to come from, which is what we have historically done. And we say that we want to delay decision making because we need to get input when we're in a crisis. Well, why not get the input before we get in the crisis? So that's what we're trying to do here. And to clarify what I'm looking for, I think what Councilman Riggenbach and I are looking for is a general election ballot question brought back that we can deliberate at the next meeting that addresses the fact that it's related to pensions and that it addresses an amount. So we'll leave it up to the manager as exactly how that can legally be worded so that we can satisfy those objectives. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, on page 3 of your diagram, item 6, slide 6, option 3, the question uses the word operations. Does that mean, would that include pensions and other cars or equipment or anything like that?
That option was designed to just simply talk about the appetite for funding a property tax for police and fire operations. Because in our view, I think we were looking at that as we don't levy a direct property tax for operations. We levy property taxes most of our property taxes are levied for pension costs, so which are benefits, but they're not direct operations out of the general fund. We're transferring money out of the general fund right now to fund pensions. So this would have been, at least as we were envisioning it, funding operations or the amount of money in the general fund that goes towards police and fire.
So it would go into the fire and police operations, and from those operation funds, it would fund the pension.
Because here's what happens right now, and what's going to happen this year and next year and the year after is that you're going to be taking money out of the general fund and transferring it into the police and fire pension funds in order to make their pension payments. Because we don't have enough property taxes we're levying, we don't have enough personal property replacement tax revenue that comes, state shared income tax revenue that we're getting, and you don't have enough money through the public safety pension fee to make those pension payments.
All that very clearly. I understand all of that very clearly. My question simply is, since it would go into the operations, could it also include other things besides paying for pensions?
Our view was yes. That, I mean, if you're funding a property tax for operations, that goes to pay for salaries, that goes to pay for equipment, That would be an operating expense.
That's where I was going with that, because if we're talking pensions, I would suspect this is an option that would not be on the table because it could include other things besides pensions. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor. Councilman Regenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify what Councilman Euler said and get Corporation Counsel to confirm or deny that this would be appropriate. Shall the city of Peoria adopt a fire/police pension or increase the fire or police pension tax in the amount? Isn't that what we just said? Because it has to say increase, not adopt. Is that correct? All right. And I just have to say, I'm so frustrated with being called a demonizer and a hater. I'm trying, and I think most of us are trying to keep this city solvent so that our kids and grandkids have a place they can be proud to call home. These are tough decisions, and they're not going away. We cannot use that kind of rhetoric and expect to accomplish what we're all after. You know what? We're not pitting people against each other. We're facing the reality of the cards that we've been dealt. And I think until we do that, until we make it clear to everybody what it is, then there's so much convoluted dialogue out there. Let's lay it on the table once and for all. Thank you.
Councilman Reckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. And with the change in the motion, and I definitely do get the fact that we want to really tie this to the pension piece, because that's the conversation. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I hope that nobody here thinks that anybody around the council is demonizing those that work for us. And I hope that the public never does that. But our current budget process does do that. It pits one department against another department. And this pension piece, even if we laid off everybody, doesn't go away. We still owe this. We've still got to figure out how to pay it. So this is not about cutting staff because that's going to save and change this. And so I think if anybody sort of thinks that we are demonizing one department or trying to make somebody feel bad about this, let's not have that out there, because this really is about just paying our obligation, how we do it, and talking to our citizens about how we do it. Nobody's saying we don't owe it. Nobody's saying that somehow we shouldn't be able to make sure that that we do right by those that have served and continue to serve our city. The only question I have, though, with how the motion is right now is it sounds like it's one number, one tax. In some of these, it's been separated out as two line items, and by putting them together with a slash, which is I think what you did, by combining them all in the same question, it looks like one, really like it would be like one line item is what you're requesting on a tax bill versus two. Is that correct?
That was not my intention. I meant to have two separate questions. I just said slash so I didn't have to talk so much. And
we are, and I think Councilmember Sear brought this up as well, and a good point not to forget is a little more than a year from now, we're going to have to talk about the pension fee that is out there already. And so that either has the chance of not being approved again and continuing on, or continuing on. So I think that not only does this ballot question, by putting it on the general ballot, call for extreme education with our citizens, we're still going to have to do more education along the way about how this pension piece affects us. And I definitely can appreciate, and I agree with Councilman Greb, we ought to have our local representatives in here. If for nothing else, in those conversations, they can see the modes that the councils are having to go with to help solve this problem, and anything that they can do to take those narratives back to Springfield can help move this ball forward. We've got great representatives on both sides of the aisle, and hopefully together they can help bring some solution to this long term. In the meantime, I think that we do value the citizens' input, and this really is the way to be able to get the most citizens' input, more than just a couple of town hall meetings, more than sort of arbitrary conversations. But let's do the education right. Let's hear from the citizens, and then let's continue to make some movements towards doing the right thing. Thanks.
Councilman Gribb.
Well, how are we going to do the education piece? When we did the $65 million expansion of the Civic Center, I was the liaison then, and we had to go out and make that case to the people. Very specifically, devil's in the details, counselors, when are we going to meet with our constituents? Where? And when we have that meeting, are we going to allow our police superintendent and our top department heads overseeing the branches of our city operation discuss the resources they currently have and how they're trying to meet the needs of the city? Could we have a mature conversation hearing from them? And maybe, while we're at it, have some of the people who work for the city tell you what it's like to be out there on the streets every night or in the streets every day. That's the education piece. But for the life of me, I haven't heard any of you tell me how you're going to do the education piece. I'm an educator. How are we going to do that? Where are we going to do it? And are we going to allow the departments who are dramatically affected and the people we hold accountable for things like public safety and clearing the streets of snow and storm debris and everything else? Are we going to let them tell us why houses aren't demolished for months on end that have had fires, etc.? And then we'll have that mature discussion before there is any vote. Because I think once the people, if they have all the facts, and they're allowed to have the facts, they will almost always do what is right. But I just don't see how it's happening, and none of you have come out or disclosed a timetable for these meetings prior to this being on the ballot, and whether or not you would agree to hear from our department heads about what they are challenged to do with the resources they have. Absent specifics of that sort, this is just nonsense. And demonization? Heck yeah. That's been happening a lot in our state and in our city. We want to blame some group for the fact that we have an unbalanced budget. Oh, we pay our firefighters too much. We pay our police officers too much. They don't earn these pensions. They're breaking us. No? Well, that's how it ends up. You put that on there, that all these pensioners here are breaking us. What are you saying? It's as if they have not earned their pensions. Now, I remember there were times when we were very concerned about saving money. There were a few of you, maybe one or two, who was in this meeting. We were thinking about outsourcing the operation of the Peoria Police Department to the county. We could save about a third of what we're paying now. My goodness gracious. Once that got out there, wise people said, not that we don't have respect for the county operations, but I remember what one of the at-large people said who sat on this side of the aisle. She said, I will never lose command and control of the police department for the people I represent in the city of Peoria. Never. To save a few bucks. So absent specifics, this is all a charade, and it does not have an education piece. No one has given specific details on how the education would be done. No one has invited the police superintendent, the fire chief, the Director of Public Works, Director of Community Development, all these stakeholders to the table to make their presentation to our people. So absent all that, you have partial information and the citizens cannot make an intelligent decision. I trust them if we have the ability to do that. So I'm waiting to hear specifics. If I don't hear specifics, I'm voting no every darn time. Thank you.
Councilmember Ali.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question for Ms. Peterson. Does putting a referendum or a question on the ballot require just a simple majority vote, or does it require more than that?
A simple majority vote.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. I'm seeing no lights. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes with 6 ayes, 5 noes. Voting yes, Mayor Artis, Councilmember Jensen, Moore, Euler, Regenbach, and Ruckriegel. Madam Clerk.
If there's no further unfinished business,
Any unfinished business this evening? Unfinished? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It has come to my attention that there has been a change in Fire Station 4 status. And if I could have Fire Chief Artis come to the mic and he can describe what that change of status is and how it came about. Chief Artis, are you there?
Can you guys got me?
Yes.
Good evening. Yes, Councilwoman. As everybody knows, October 1st, per council action, Engine 4 was taken out of service, Engine 4 being on Southwest Jefferson. We had, during the course of the budget process and the information that we had provided, we anticipated our 90th percentile travel time to increase to about 6 minutes, 12 seconds. And again, that's travel time only. It doesn't take into consideration call handling or turnout time. So we had been obviously monitoring the situation since October 1st just to make, keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the forest territory. And what we found, not only after a week, 2 weeks, and then ultimately after speaking with the manager, 2 more weeks to get more data, what we found is the travel time at the 90th percentile level is 6 minutes and 59 seconds. When you add call handling time of between 30 seconds to 45 seconds and turnout time from anywhere to a minute and a half, you're looking at 8.5, 8:45 total response time, which concerned us greatly. Again, we knew it wasn't going to be a great situation, but that was higher than we anticipated. So we sat down as a command staff to try to solve this problem as best we could with the resources that we have. And we had conversations with the manager voicing our concern. And the only option or the only thing we could come up with was to reintroduce Engine 4 at Station 4 on Jefferson, move Truck 4 from Station 8 on Hurlburt, and decommission Engine 2, which is on Hurlburt, so that would effectively shut down Station 8. We thought about this in the initial stages of the budget prior to the council's decision, and our concern was obviously Bradley University, Moss Avenue, the larger homes on Moss Avenue, and that was one of the reasons that we really didn't bring it forward at that point. But we couldn't in good conscience, knowing what our response time was in the 4th district at this point, our forest territory, excuse me, we couldn't just let that go without trying to make some adjustment. We have no, I want to make this clear, we have no doubt this is not going to solve the problem. It's just not. It's just going to move, it's going to solve the problem in the forest territory somewhat, but it's just going to open up a bigger issue or a similar issue in Station 8's territory. But the good thing about the 8's territory is we are covered with 3 stations. But the call volume of those 3 stations is quite large.
So you said that kind of fast. Engine 4 is going back into Jefferson. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned something about truck 4.
Yes, ma'am. So truck 4 is currently at Station 8 with engine 2. I know this is a little bit confusing. But we cannot have engine 4 down there by themselves. It's incredibly unsafe. So what the game plan is to put engine 4 back at Station 4, move truck 4 to Station 4, and then, again, working within the confines of the council's direction, we would shut down engine 2, which would make up for putting engine 4 back in service.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that there's going to be an engine and a truck back on Jefferson.
That's correct.
Okay, and you mentioned that there were 3 stations that could service the Station 8 territory. What stations are those? Where are they located?
So Station 4, 2711 Southwest Jefferson, Station 3 on Armstrong, just off of University, and then Central House on Monroe.
Well, on the one hand, I can say that I'm very happy that Station 4 is going to reopen on Jefferson. As I had tried to impress upon this body prior to it closing, where it's located so far south, and removing that, I felt like it would increase times more than was reasonable. And also, I will reiterate that Station 4, based upon the information provided by the fire chief, receives the most fire calls in our city. And now that Station 8 is going down, I believe Station 8, I don't have that, well, maybe you have it here. I don't have the fire information with me today. But Station 8 receives quite a few calls itself. What confidence can you provide our residents in the Station 8 territory? And that's on Hurlburt. For references, it's on the other side of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park. So the fire station that you all see there, that's Station 8 that we're referring to, and that's Hurlburt that it's on. What confidence can you provide those who are listening that a similar increase in time will not be discovered with Station 8 going down, although these other stations are in close proximity?
Councilwoman, I can't. And I'm always hesitant to give data or to give my opinion because it always seems to be construed as being dramatic. That was one of the good parts about what took place this past month is pretty much everything that we had said during the budget process came to fruition. We respect the fact that we have to make manpower decisions within the confines of what we're given. But as far as saying that we're not going to see a dramatic increase at Station 8's territory, I can't give that. The only thing I can promise you is that after this move is made, we will do the same thing that we did beginning October 1st, and that's provide real-time 90th percentile data that is showing what's going on. I can't say this enough, and I know this has been a long night for everyone, but I can't say this enough that this is not solving the problem. This is going to increase response times in Central's territory. This is going to increase response times in Station 3's territory. And probably the biggest thing that scares our command staff, and you've heard me talk about safety, I'll go back to what Interim City Manager Bern Ewert said back in 2004 when he was tasked with shutting down Engine 11 and Engine 2, and ultimately it was decided just for Engine 11. His exact words were, "I cannot in good conscience recommend shutting down Engine 2 because of the peril it will put Station 4's crew in." Those were his almost verbatim words, and yet that's what we're doing. And so as a command staff, we don't feel good about this. It scares us, but we're trying to solve this problem within the resources that we have.
And so before the Jefferson Station was closed, the only machine there was Engine 4. Is that correct?
So prior to Rescue 1 and Rescue 2 being decommissioned on January 1st of 2019, Truck 4 was at Station 4 with Engine 4. So it's only been at Station 8 since January 1st of 2019.
So the answer to the question is, prior to the immediate closure of Station 4, the only machine there was Engine 4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so now taking Truck 4 there then provides an additional team of individuals that can provide some level of additional protection for the firefighters there, although, as you just eloquently stated, in the past it has been stated that Station 8 going down does put Station 4 into some peril. I don't like hearing that. I don't like any station closing. I don't like Station 8 closing, especially when I'm hearing you say it could still put our firefighters at risk. That is never a good thing. I've watched them fight a fire on the south side, and I was amazed. I don't know if anyone has ever watched these folks fight a fire. It is something that, it's not something I could do, I'm sure, because of the level of equipment that they carry and the smoke that they're going through and risking injury to themselves to go in to determine if there's anybody in there. So I'm not happy that Station 8 is closing, but if you have to choose between two devils, the fact that Station 4 on Jefferson is reopening because it is surrounded by some of the oldest homes in our city. It's very important for that to occur. And then perhaps as the budget goes forward into the new year and we have other funds, that's one of the reasons I question if we have new funds, what is the priority of distributing those funds around? Perhaps we can revisit Station 8. But I wanted to bring you forward, Chief, so that the residents of the South Side, and especially those serviced by Station 4, would understand that when they see things going in and out of that building, that station is reactivated. Thank you.
Any further unfinished business tonight? Councilman Graham.
Yes, I'd like to elaborate a little bit on conversation we've been having about fire rescue response. This is truly not a district issue. We have 5 districts. Said that all along. I think we all know it. We should not have closed even one firehouse. Whenever we get the resources, we need to reopen. But we've had this discussion before. We'll have it again. We do have mass casualty areas in our city, and Bradley University is one of them, not to mention the densely populated neighborhoods in the Uplands, Moss Avenue, Bradley University in between. Chief, what was the concern of the command staff with this potential change?
The concern was the backup, the lag time on the backup of Engine 4 and Truck 4 if they respond to a residential or a commercial structure fire in that territory. Their next engine company will be, if we go by the data, the 90th percentile data, Engine 1 from Central House is approximately 858, and Engine 3 about 9 minutes. That university.
We're talking about the Hurlburt House, correct?
Well, the Hurlburt House will be shut down.
Yeah. And the ramification would be first responders would be coming from which houses to Bradley University area, Uplands, Moss Bradley? Where would first responder be coming from? Central Firehouse and where else?
For a structure fire, Councilman?
Yes,
So that would be Engine 3 on Armstrong, Engine 13. I'm sorry, microphone's cutting out.
Ladder, the nearest aerial ladder.
The nearest aerial ladder would be either Truck 4 or Truck 1. So Truck 1's at Central House, Truck 4's will be at Station 4. and then you'd have engine 1, engine 13 from Gale will be the first line of a structure fire.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, and engine 12, I'm sorry, Councilman, engine 12 on Northeast Adams would complete
and
that.
you know by now that I don't like you to use. You needs to attach a location to the number. And thank you for giving us the precise locations as to where the apparatus actually is, because my constituents listening at home don't necessarily know this. So again, what this underscores, based on what's happened since we closed the firehouse, is we have a problem. We have created a problem. And the problem keeps moving. And you just heard the fire chief tell you what a previous city manager said. And he thought it was absolutely irresponsible and wouldn't do it. So here we are. So why do you think I interrogate almost, and I'm sure the manager doesn't like it, but ask all these questions about package, help out of Springfield, whatever, because I'm trying to maintain core basic services. We all are. All the districts need these services. It's not a district issue, but you take one firehouse out, it has huge ramifications for the spider web response of the entire city. So we must resolve tonight that as soon as we get the resources, we restore that firehouse which we've cut. And I can't believe, again, back in April, we had a recommendation from the city management to cut 3 firehouses. With the kind of discussion we're having tonight, it's just unbelievable. Thank you.
Councilman Wither?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment that this is the reason why we shouldn't be in the business of picking which engines and which firehouses when we have the discussion about the budgetary needs and staffing levels. That should be left up to the professionals, and the professionals did what they needed to do and allocated resources in a different manner. So just to point out for future reference in those types of decisions in the future, we should think about that our job is to allocate the resources to the professionals and allow them to make the decision on which engines and firehouses go up or down based on that amount. Thank you.
We're still on unfinished business. Any unfinished business? Madam Clerk?
We would be at new business.
New business tonight, new business. Councilman Ruckriegel?
Thank you, Mayor. During our joint meeting that we had with the county, and let me again say my thank you for Councilmember Ali and on all of our hard work on that Joint Commission on Racial Justice and Equity and helping put that together. And while she was walking us through some of the rationale and some of the steps in this, Dr. Ali made some comments about the community assessment and referred to those and made some valuable information that this has a lot of data. And so I've asked for the Heart of Illinois United Way to provide everybody with a copy of the most latest 2020 community assessment, hoping that this will give us some of that data that Dr. Ali referred to, and why what we're doing here is extremely important with this joint committee. And there are 8 committees on there that all have valuable priorities. This will touch on some of the current data. The other nice thing about this is it shows where we are among some of our peers. And if we go to this online, you can actually go into how this data was constructed and some of the information that went into this. This is a book that is put together every couple of years by the Heart of Illinois United Way, and it has a lot of local input. Dr. Weinzimmer, who is the Caterpillar Professor for Management at Bradley University, heads this process and this program, and I think that you'll find the data in here is very enlightening and really does give a lot of the data point about why this commission is so important. So again, thank you, Councilmember Ali, for your work on that, and just thought I would help in that process to make for sure that we all had a common language here on where we're starting from. Thank you.
Have Councilman Riggenbach next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Mr. Manager, if with the change in the weather coming sooner than later, undoubtedly, and with an apparent increase in our unsheltered population downtown, I was wondering if we could get Kate Green from the Continuum of Care to come in and just kind of update the council as to some of the things that they are doing and some of the efforts they have to address that issue. And I don't know if it's possible to do it yet this year, or at least in early January, if we could get her in here just to kind of give us an overview of their services and partnerships. And, Mr. Mayor, in light of our passing the budget tonight, I would suggest or make a motion that we cancel next week's special meeting that was going to be entitled for the purpose of the budget, and perhaps the meeting on the 24th on Thanksgiving week as well. So I would move to cancel those two meetings.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Moore. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes with 10 ayes, 1 nay. Councilman Graham. I have Councilmember Moore next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could piggyback on something Councilman Riggenbach mentioned for the city manager, when you bring those folks back here from the Continuum of Care to talk about what we're doing to assist the homeless, could you also at that time explain or discuss what the limitations of the city are when in trying to move the homeless along, if you will? I've received a lot of questions from individuals as to why the city allows those who are trying to solicit funds from folks in one corner or another. And I know that there are limitations to what we can do to move folks around. So if you could explain that so everyone understands that our hands are tied and somewhat that we can't just, folks have their rights to be where they want to be and on public property, and we can't just move them along sometimes. So if you could go into that, I'd appreciate it. What I wanted to mention, however, announce, I should say, is that you may recall some of you who participated in this a week ago or so were blessed to receive a food distribution from Bishop Chris over at Promise Academy at 919 South Matthew. He has received another shipment of food and including perishable items from the FDA. And tomorrow, all day tomorrow, at what the former Blaine Sumner School at 919 South Matthew, anyone from any part of the city is welcome to come by and receive a box of perishable and non-perishable food items. For your information, no forms or ID are required. You don't have to make a reservation. You stay in your car. It's a drive-through process. You drive through with your car, and someone will put a package in your vehicle. So that's 919 South Matthew, the former Blaine Sumner School. Bishop Chris at the Promise Academy is distributing this food, and no forms or ID are required, and no one's going to take roll to determine if you've been here before or been someplace else before. So I hope a lot of folks hear this information and is able to receive the blessing that he has for you there. Thank you.
Councilman Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good news tonight. One of our major employers has announced that they are going to open an urgent care facility at Sheridan and War Drive across the street from Beeler Home, where we've had a strip mall undergoing many changes through the years, and be plenty of parking. It's a huge plus, huge step forward for this part of the city, having an ergo care facility there. And again, I have to certainly thank, and I know all of you do as well, our dominant employer now is medical, and OSF is very much part of the equation in terms of giving back to this community and doing great things. So we're looking forward to this development. And there will be other announcements coming unrelated to this that I think will please all of us, that will be development of a medical nature in the heart of our city. Thank you.
Any other new business this evening? I have one to end on a good note. We were going to announce this under new business at the last meeting, but our assistant clerk was not here. Now she's not here again. So we're gonna make sure everybody's aware of this, and hopefully Stephanie will come back before we're finished. So it was brought to our attention that our assistant clerk, Stephanie Tarr, was recently elected the vice president of the Central Illinois Municipal Clerks during its annual meeting in October. And in addition to that, Stephanie was awarded the President's Award in recognition of her commitment and support to the Central Illinois Municipal Clerks Organization. And a lot of that was assistance that Stephanie gave to help further education of the other clerks. So we would like to acknowledge Stephanie and also acknowledge the clerk, who has done a great job of mentoring her and bringing along in the same ways that you were brought up as well. So congratulations to our deputy city clerk. I don't see any more lights for any new business, so I'll make one last call for new business. And I'm seeing none. Madam Clerk.
We're at citizens' opportunity to address the city council, and I have not received any emails for comment.
Okay. Anyone who would like to address the city under citizens to address? Okay. Assistant Clerk, I'm sorry you weren't here a minute ago, but being as you're back, I'm going to say this while you're here. We just recognized you for being in receipt of the President's Award from the clerks, and also congratulations on being elected Vice President of the Central Illinois Municipal Clerks Organization and your leadership in that regard. Thank you very much. So it looks like we have no citizens to address. Madam Clerk.
We have an executive session.
Corporation Counsel.
We will go into executive session under 5 ILCS 122C1 for the employment of specific employees, 5, the purchase of property, 11, to discuss pending litigation, and 21, to discuss closed session minutes.
Okay. We have a motion to go into executive session by Councilman Ruckriegel, seconded by Councilman Sear. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously, and now we'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Kelly, seconded by Councilmember Moore. Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. We'd like to thank Joe Deacon and his listening audience at WCBU, as well as Cable Channel 22. This meeting is adjourned.